and welcome back for your third Weird Dose of X. I'm here as always with my good friend, direct from Chris and Reggie's Cosmic Treadmill, Chris Sheehan.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? We are back for our third episode, and well, hopefully we'll be able to actually get through some stuff this time. We can't make any promises. I can't make any promises.
Well, I think the last couple of our first two episodes, getting started when figuring this thing out, and also we chose the meatiest parts to talk about first.
This is
So
true.
yes, we've only spoken about I think 24 actual issues of comics, and there's like that's less than
100.
10%
Yeah,
of what's been published so far in the
yeah,
Krakoan era. So we're gonna pick up the pace this time a little bit
yeah.
because our
Hopefully.
goal is, of course, to have everybody up to speed, ready for the summer crossover event, Axe Judgment Day.
Hmm.
I checking that Marvel website because I'm waiting to see it be delayed. Everything else is being delayed. The things I'm doing
True.
with Jim keep getting delayed. So I'm trying to see, but so far it's remained steady, and it tells me that the first Prelude issue, Eve of Judgment #1, is supposed to come out July 13th, about a little over 5 weeks from now.
Hmm.
So we have a little bit of time to talk about everything between now and then. And if they decide to pull the rug out and delay it a month and a half, well, we'll find something to talk
We'll
about, I'm
play it
sure.
by ear for sure. Yeah, they are. It's crazy. It seems like every single week, somebody is reaching out to me to tell me, "Hey, have you checked Marvel solicits lately?" And usually my answer is no, because I stay
Mm.
away from that kind of stuff
Yep,
on the
yep.
internet. But then I'm, I'm given a link and I look and Bleeding Cool saying, "Hey, check it out. If you have books that you think you're getting, you're probably not."
Mm.
So
I have a whole spreadsheet put together of timing when all our crossover books are supposed to come out, and so far they say they're still coming. So maybe they're prioritizing this, or
could
maybe
be.
it'll all get kicked 2 months down the road. Who the hell
It
knows?
could. It could. Yeah. We had similar things with the X of Swords event, which we'll get to eventually here. But I remember that was all set, and then we had the world kind of
Yeah.
stopped for a little while, and that got pushed back. Everything got pushed back, and things got changed in the interim. It's who knows? I think we have. I think the difference between Axe and X of Tens is that I think this one's going to be more one person's voice. I could be completely mistaken, but Kieran Gillen seems to be like the steward of this
Yes, I
upcoming
bet I'm
event.
sure the crossover issues and like the issues of actual series that happen to tie in, and we'll
Those
see.
will be the other folks, of
Always you
course.
never know how much
Yeah,
it's really going to tie in, or if there'll be one panel that
the
actually
Red
matters.
Sky.
But
Yeah.
we'll see. It looks like Kieran Gillen is running the show. Plus, he's also writing that Immortal X-Men book right now,
Yeah.
which is it's I don't know if I'm going to call it the flagship book, but at least after
Mhm.
the first two issues, it feels like it's very central because it's all about the Quiet Council.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I still haven't. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm keeping that one under wraps until I, would be able to cover it for the show. So haven't read it, but I've heard a lot of very good things about it. I'm very intrigued and very excited to get to it.
Yeah,
But
first two issues are both quite good. So
very
our
cool. Very
specific
cool.
goal today is to get through the Dawn of X era, which was
Hmm.
Marvel's term for all of the X books between the end of House of X, Powers of X, and the first line-wide crossover, the X of Swords.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's a lot of books, but
Oh yeah.
not all of them are so relevant either just at all anymore or
Mhm.
to the crossover. So we'll
Arc
we'll try
specific
not to
all,
get too
yeah.
lost in the weeds on them. So let's jump right in. The first one, which is probably one of the meatier ones, is Marauders by Jerry Duggan.
Yes, this one caught me off guard when I saw it on the racks because, first of all, it's like there's a book called
Mhm.
Marauders.
So who were the original Marauders? I know it was kind of scandalous in universe when
Yes.
Kate called them Marauders, but
Yeah.
why was that?
The Marauders were a group of, well, basically marauding characters put together
Fair
by
enough.
Mr. Sinister, who were responsible for the mutant massacre, just slaughtering the
Oh, okay.
Morlocks under in the sewers of New York. And the mutant massacre was a pretty groundbreaking story when it happened. It was very, very early in the crossover era.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was the first or Fall of the Mutants was first. They're easy to conflate since, like, you have Mutant Massacre, Fall of the Mutants. You can mix and match, I
Conceptually
suppose.
kind of similar thing, yeah.
Certainly, certainly. But it was the first time that they actually put effort into having all of the books cross over, and all of the books. It's almost quaint to consider. It was X Men or Uncanny X Men, X Factor, and New Mutants. That was it.
Hmm.
Those were our X books at that point in time. Excalibur would be born of the Mutant Massacre, but we weren't there just yet.
Oh, I didn't realize it spun out of that. Interesting.
Yeah, it was
I've
because,
read some of those
or maybe it was the
Mutant
Fall of the
Massacre.
Mutants. It might have been Fall of the
Okay.
Mutants. One or the other. I've done a lot of writing on both. I don't remember which one is which at this point. But Excalibur did come out of one of those when the X-Men were assumed to be dead. Kitty, Kurt, and Rachel they went to the UK, met up with Captain Britain, yada yada yada. Lighthouse, new team, blah blah blah. They should have just put X Dash instead of Excalibur. It would have sold better, but they didn't. And they
Oh well.
probably shouldn't have charged 50 cents more an issue either. But what are you going to do? But the Marauders, they were the ones who went into to the sewers and they slaughtered the mutants, the Morlocks. It would eventually be revealed. It was one of the worst kept secrets in Marvel and X-Men history. But that Gambit, the hero Gambit, was
Hmm.
kind of the he was kind of the scout. He kind of pointed the Marauders where they needed to go. It's like, oh, those are the people to
Oh.
kill. Go ahead and do it. And yeah, he was put on trial. There was a trial for Gambit in Uncanny X-Men 350, which very weird, very interesting. But
Comics like their trials.
they
They
do,
do.
they do. And in this one, they actually had a trial. Believe it or not, usually when we have trial in a title,
Right. It's metaphorical, or
it's
no. Actually.
tenuous at
Hmm.
best. But when Kate took, or call me Kate, I still hate calling her Kate. I'm not. I feel like they're pushing it too hard, and I just don't want to. I don't want to play the game. I don't want to do what they want me to do. But when Call Me Kate says, they were the Marauders, she proclaimed that they were the Marauders. Um, it raised a lot of eyebrows in the story, of course. So we are more enlightened than all of that. But to take the name of the group responsible for slaughtering a great number of mutants, it's a bit scandalous, a bit sinister. No pun intended.
Hmm. So this book, we talked about the X-Men flagship book, was just kind of individual, mostly one-shot stories, kind of here, there, and everywhere on
Yeah,
Krakoa, where Marauders is much more of an actual
linear.
continuous
Yeah.
story.
Hmm.
It's I really think of it mostly as the Kitty slash Kate Pride story. I know Emma's in there a lot too, and there's Storm in there, of course, and all these other characters. But when I think back on what I got out of that story, I think of what we learned about Kate Pride, Captain
Yeah.
Kate Pride.
Yeah, it was Kitty's book for sure. Emma would take it over eventually, and Storm. I think Duggan only put Storm in there when he remembered that she was a part of the cast. It was like, oh, well, yeah, we have Storm. We haven't seen her in 6 months. Give her 5 panels in this book. She was really kind of just there or not there. It's kind of the thing. This one was on the show. I would refer to this as like the most consistent book of the
Hmm.
early era because, well, it was. I mean, it wasn't always going to knock your socks off, but it wasn't going to make you mad either. It was
Sure.
a very steady book. You could always count on it to be beautiful. I mean, I think Matteo Lally was the artist on this. It might still be, or maybe before the Orlandoism or Orlandoing of the book. But Matteo Lally was one of the main artists on it. It was a gorgeous book, and also it was just you knew you were in for maybe a safe but a good time. You
Hmm.
weren't going to be disappointed quite
So
as
I
often.
guess we should talk about what the mission statement of this book was. The Marauders are
Mhm.
set up to be kind of the not the above the board trading of the mutant drugs, but like getting these mutant meds into places
A
where
black market, yeah.
where the governments didn't want them to be. So the two things, we want to get the drugs out, the good drugs, of course,
Mhm.
out into the places where they're needed and they have trouble getting them the regular way, and also to help bring home mutants who have
Refugees.
trouble getting to the gates,
Yep.
right? If they're in Russia or other places where the government or other people are preventing them from, exercising their right to go to Krakoa, Kate and her crew are going to head out and help them get home.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and one of the early things in this story was the fact that Kitty couldn't go through the Krakoan gates, which uh, I think they kind of forgot about that storyline. Maybe it'll come back.
Yeah, so
Uh,
so she was kind of set up to kind of put a little problem, a little question mark in the whole Krakoan things are different now, right? Because we learn on
Yeah.
Krakoa you can resurrect dead mutants,
Hmm.
and they can just go through these gates and live in Krakoa. So I think right in issue number one, she tries to go through one of the
She
gates,
breaks her
and it's
nose.
just she breaks
Yeah.
her nose, just completely solid to her.
Hmm.
It's not even like humans, like regular humans, can go through the gates if they're kind of like accompanied by a mutant and
Yeah.
they have like the permission of Krakoa, something like that. So
Hmm.
humans can use the gates with like training wheels. Kate just excluded
Yeah.
completely.
Completely. She can't go in.
So then they were always worried about, well, she can't move around the way everyone else can. So it kind of made sense for her to be on a ship because now she can travel on a ship. She didn't feel completely at home on Krakoa.
Mhm.
She didn't feel so welcome. She felt kind of like the island was excluding her, which
For sure.
is
Kinda.
understandable. So
It
yeah,
also
so she
raised into question whether or not she was actually a mutant, which this isn't the first time that we've questioned whether or not Kitty's a mutant.
Mhm.
It's been called under question before. During the second Claremont run, it was rumored that she was. Well, we talked. I think we mentioned the Neo last time, didn't we?
We did. We
We
did.
did. It was rumored that she was actually a Neo, which is still a mutant, but not really. Or it's the what mutants are to humans, the Neo are to mutants. So maybe a whole different plane of mutant reality, or they never really got fleshed out because they sucked. So
Yeah, let's hope those don't come back. But
yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
was question about like exactly what she was. So
yeah.
she felt kind of on the side. And I guess if you're on Krakoa, people are going through gates all the time, and you always got to take the long way around. You're gonna feel a
You're
little
gonna get a
a
chip
little
on your
lame.
shoulder for
Sure.
sure, for
So
sure.
it made sense for her to go around and kind of. She was always more into like interacting with the rest of the world too. So she wasn't
Hmm.
as Krakoa brained. Like some people just want to stay on Krakoa, and this is our new place now.
Yeah,
She was more interacting with the rest of the world. And
absolutely,
I think a
absolutely,
lot of this book is the story of her. I'm not going to say growing up, but trying to demonstrate that she's grown up, which is different,
for sure.
right? So she
I can
wants to
co-sign
show
that. Yeah.
she can be the she's the captain now, and
Hmm.
she can be in charge of things, and she's not. That's when she says she wants to be called Kate. She doesn't want to be called Kitty anymore. I
Yeah.
guess it sounds too much like a little kid, and she wants to be the grown up
Hmm.
Kate. And we see, like in a lot of the books at this time, she was either drinking a lot or at least acting like she was drinking a lot.
Yeah.
She was kind of being more violent than one would expect of the old Kitty Pryde to be,
Brutal. Yeah.
phasing objects into people and then letting go, and then, like a gun be phased through somebody's leg and just be pretty horrible.
Oh yeah, yeah. And this is actually something that I took a lot of. I questioned a lot of when I first read it because it felt like they were trying way too hard to not only just harden Kitty, but the Marauder characters in general. Like even Iceman was acting uncharacteristically brutal. Like he'd be freezing limbs and punching them and shattering arms on characters, and it's like, what the hell are they doing here? It just seemed very out of character for Bobby, especially when Bobby's a character I don't think very many people have a handle on to begin with.
Hmm.
I mean, even to this very day, every time we see Bobby, it's his story is basically, hey, here's this really powerful mutant who hasn't lived up to his potential yet, so let's watch him try. It's like, well, we saw that last time. Well, we saw that the time before that, and we're still seeing it now.
Yeah, it's kind of the Aquaman story where every writer has to show,
Who
oh,
thoughts
you
the
think he's a
fish?
joke,
Her,
but he's
her,
not a
her,
joke,
her.
right?
Yeah.
And once you keep saying that so many times, it's kind of
It kind of
self
under
defeating.
exactly. So yeah, Kitty's acting out. She's getting her knuckles tattooed, which I mean we can go into whole like philosophical stuff
Yeah,
about that,
and
but
every
we
time she gets knuckle tattoos, she then makes out with a tattoo artist. First, it's a
seems like it.
guy. The second time,
Yeah,
both times, I guess that she has a type, and they're
yeah,
tattoo artists. So
yeah,
the first time she gets "Hold Fast"
yeah.
tattooed on her knuckles, which is an old sailor thing. Apparently, the idea was if you get that tattooed on your hands, you're better able to pull on the
The
ropes.
mast.
You'll
Yeah.
have a better grip on the ropes.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's it again, reinforcing the whole "Yar, I'm a
I'm
pirate"
a pirate.
idea. So hold fast. Yeah.
The
So
second
we
time it was
this
Kill Shaw, but we'll get to that
yeah, that's a little
because
down the road. And so the
because
other thing that
she.
happens to her is she gets put on the Quiet Council. Emma
Mm-hmm.
wants another one of her, someone she can trust on the Quiet Council, and she manages to make Kitty the Red Queen.
of Hellfire Industries, or however
Right.
they're calling it nowadays.
Yep, which gets it. So she's got a high up position in Hellfire Trading Company and
Hmm.
also on the Quiet Council. And this makes Shaw really mad because he
Hmm.
wanted to get his newly resurrected son on the Quiet Council. This sets up the antagonism between Shaw on one side and
Kitty and
Kitty
Emma on the
slash
other.
Kate and Emma
Yeah.
on the other.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, to further along the question of whether or not Kitty's actually a mutant, in the sixth issue of Marauders, I believe it's the sixth issue, Sebastian Shaw manages to drown her, kills her. And
Mhm.
they spend the next several issues in, vignette form trying to resurrect her, but they can't.
Yes, and it was actually kind of dramatic. Like, I mean, I guess we always knew she was going to come back, but they strung it
Yeah.
along a lot longer than, for instance, Professor X remained dead.
No, for
Like he
sure,
was
for
he was
sure.
gone and back right away. But
Next
they actually made
episode,
it
yeah.
seem like, well, maybe she's not coming back. I think it was, yeah, I think it was she dies at the end of issue 6,
Mhm.
and she comes back at the very end of issue 11.
Yeah, right
So
before
a good
Exit
stretch of
ends.
time there.
But this is comics of current year, so Marvel is really good about spoiling upcoming covers and upcoming
Yeah.
storylines. So it's like, oh, Kitty's dead. Oh wait, she's on the cover of 3 issues. Okay, okay, never mind. It's it is
Yeah,
what it
so the
is.
way they resolved that was they said that so the five, the ones who do the resurrection thing,
Mm.
they kept making new kitties, but they never actually came out of the egg.
Yeah,
So there was never a moment where you could then put the mind slash maybe soul, but don't think about it too hard, back into the kind of blank husk of a person.
hmm,
And the way they resolved it was a little hand wavy, but I believe that this was set up for the beginning. I don't think they made this up at the end. I think the idea always was this that it
yeah,
has to do with Kate's mutant power,
for
that
sure.
she phases through things. So instead of, breaking out of an egg the way all the other mutants did, she had to be like assisted to
Phase
phase
through.
out of the egg.
Yeah,
And once they did that, she was back again. And okay, now resurrection works for her. We don't have to worry so much about, oh, she's eligible to die permanently, unlike everybody else, because we don't
hmm,
know if it's going to work. We know it's going to work for her. We just got to do it a little differently.
yeah. It's just a different method to it. I definitely think that they had planned this. Still doesn't make it a satisfying read.
Not incredibly, no.
No,
I think that the antagonism between her and Shaw was fun to watch.
it was.
That
It
he's,
was.
he's a brutal guy. He has his own interests, and it was
Mhm.
good to see an actual villain in an X book for a while.
Yeah, we don't
Where
get very many of those
no,
anymore,
you
do
could
we?
see people working at cross purpose, but he was like a flat out, I want to be in charge of things, and I'm willing to kill you, probably permanently. I don't really care in order to get that.
For
So we
sure.
see he like hides on the ship, and he manages to create a reason for all the other marauders to have to be somewhere else.
Hmm.
So then they're
Hmm.
gone. He pops up on the ship. He shoots a net at Lockheed, the
Yep.
cute little dragon. So we know he's a villain if he's attacking Lockheed.
Can't do
And
that.
he tangles Kate up in some Krakoan vines, and she just drowns right there in the ocean,
Hmm.
pretty brutally.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it was really well done. It was actually, I think a lot of us, readers of my vintage will complain about the 6 issue structure of current year comics, but this was actually one that built up okay. You could read any of these 6 issues and feel like you were getting a legitimate chapter of a story, not just part 4 of 6. You were getting a story, but it was almost Claremontian in a way where there were subplots that were building upon each other. We had questions about our favorite place in the world, Madripoor. I mean, Madripoor sucks the way they do it now. Madripoor was really cool when we saw it like once every 4 years. Now we see it once every 3 days. It's not as pleasant anymore, not as novel, but we had stories about Madripoor. We had stories about the Gates. We had stories about the individual members of the cast. We had the executioner shows up. Yellow Jacket smuggles himself onto Krakoa.
That was a fun little plotline. That was the
Hmm.
group of like evil little kids. They were the
Yeah.
Amanes
Oh
Verendi.
yeah, the Hellfire Tots, Omenes
Hellfire
Verendi. Yeah,
Tots, yes,
yeah.
exactly. So yeah, the way they were going to do it, they tagged Yellow Jacket in this fight with
Hmm.
these, crazy cartoony bad guys, the Executioner and the
Hate
Monger.
monger.
One of
Yeah.
them is actually like a reincarnated Hitler. I forget which is which. It doesn't really
Hate
matter.
monger.
Hate
It's hate
Monger
monger.
is. They were
Yeah.
just they were supposed to fight the Marauders and kind of poke somebody. I think they were going for Kate, but they poked Yellow
Bishop.
Jacket
Yeah.
with this thing that injected a tiny shrunken down Yellow Jacket,
Hmm.
who was like an Ant-Man kind of situation. He can
Yeah.
shrink things, and he's in this
It's
submarine.
it's one of Ant-Man's old identities too.
Okay, great. And so he's hiding inside Yellow Jacket,
Was it Pyro or
inside
Bishop?
Pyro, inside
Pyro.
Pyro.
Yeah.
Sorry. So Yellow Jacket inside Pyro, and it's like Fantastic Voyage. He's kind of wandering around inside the body, and he managed
Mhm.
to get himself up to a place where he can like see what he's looking at and hear things. And because he's inside a mutant, he can go through the gates with the mutant, and he can hang out on Krakoa. And at least for the purpose of this story, no one's scanning closely enough to realize this is happening.
Yeah.
So he's able to send reports back to the Hellfire Tots, and I think they're just selling this information to, of course, the Russians and
Mhm.
anybody else who wants to keep
Whoever
tab
wants to pay.
on
Yeah.
what these mutants are up to these days.
For sure, for sure. That was one of the issues. It was a lot of fun to read, but at the same time, it kind of underscored one of the bigger problems with this entire era, in that Emma Frost did some sort of mental hoodoo on Yellow Jacket, which made him see what she thought he wanted to see, which is
Yes.
basically killing the entire team. Basically, he killed
Yeah,
Emma, he killed Bishop.
and Marvel Girl was going to be like, well, first it was like they kind of they she put the hoodoo on Pyro,
Mhm.
and then the Pyro was kind of brought in on it, and then they did it on Yellow Jacket so they could make him think that he was
Killing
killing
everybody.
everybody.
And
But then
yeah, and the thing of it is,
they made him come out and embiggen himself again,
mhm,
and then they kind of just there was a moment where they thought, oh, are they just going to kill him now?
yeah,
But they actually brought those Krakoan laws back up and said, yeah, we can't actually kill him, so they just kind of shoot him back across the
they
ocean.
jettison him. But like in the interim of the reveal and him thinking he killed everybody, there was like no tension there, because sure, he could kill Emma Frost, he could kill Bishop, he could kill Pyro, and they'd be back in 5 seconds.
Mhm.
So I think that totally
It
underscored
did, but
the entire
it at least
thing.
for me, it made me believe that it wasn't an illusion, right?
Well, that's a problem,
If
I
this had
think.
happened in regular, back in old times, where if you see one character just kill everybody, I
You'd
as a
know right
reader is
away.
going to know, well, that's not really happening in the book. That's stupid. That can't possibly happen.
Mhm.
But now it can because they can bring everybody back. But
Yeah, and I
it
think
wasn't.
that was kind of that was my main problem with it. It was like I didn't there was no suspension of disbelief there. It's like, "Oh, okay, well he killed them and they'll be back." Okay. It kind of fell flat for me.
Okay.
It kind of underscored a lot of the bigger problems with this entire era. But yeah, that was I'm trying to think, is there anything else before X of Swords that Marauders brought to the table?
I think we saw Forge a few times, and he has a kind of a new persona. He's kind of this I can build anything,
Chucklehead
but he's
Jock.
he's
Yeah.
like a very bro, very let's all do push ups and show off
Yeah.
how strong we are, and yeah, dude, bro.
Yeah, very, very chuckleheady. One thing about Marauders, this is back when Jerry Duggan could write funny. I don't
Yeah.
think he can write funny anymore, or not as funny anymore. He was actually very, very funny, and up until X of Swords, we had a pretty good ensemble cast. Just that Duggan forgot about them after that. This was such a solid book, to the point where any kind of lapse in solidness was noticeable.
Hmm.
And I feel like after X of Swords, which we'll get to, eventually, I feel like this definitely suffered during the second half, or I guess we would say the Destiny of X, not Destiny of X, Reign of X era.
Hmm.
I feel like it was kind of an afterthought. It
Yeah,
kind of
it
became
felt
the
like
Emma book.
at the meeting where they set everything up, they had this big idea for, oh, let's do this arc with Kate,
Mhm.
and she can't use the gates, and maybe she'll die and she'll come back, and that was kind of like all they had set up. It felt like, and after
Yeah.
that, well, what are we going to do next?
Yeah, it's like, hey, Have we done that Emma Frost story where she's the coolest person in the room? Well, yeah, we did that 2 weeks ago. We'll do it
Yeah,
again.
it is,
We'll
it
do
is
it
clear that
again.
all the writers want to show off just how cool they think Emma is. I mean, she's a cool character, but we have 8 jillion mutants. Let's spread the
Yeah.
love around a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean there is the whole protesting too much, which brings us to Excalibur, I think, which
The only
is
thing I want to say before
oh,
we
go
leave
ahead.
Marauders is that what do we think might be relevant from Marauders to our crossover, to our Axe
Ooh.
event?
Um,
Anything? I see there is a Marauders tie-in book in it. Marauders number 6
mhm.
is going to be part of the crossover. Again, how much it's
Who
actually
knows? Yeah,
relevant, who the
it
hell
could just
knows?
be
I
it could be
think
a red
maybe,
sky.
yep. But yeah, I think anything involving Kate is going to be, if you want to know where Kate's coming from, where she is, this is the book to read through. At least, again, these first 12 issues should be plenty to give you the
Yeah,
idea of
because
here's the new status quo for Kitty Pryde.
I think she actually kind of just took a back seat after that. I mean, they brought her back right before X of Swords. She had zero part in that.
Oh yeah.
She had nothing to do with that. There was the revenge arc with Shaw. Um, then it was like all Emma all the
Yeah,
time.
I guess the revenge thing where now Kate and Emma kind of have Shaw in their back pocket still. Where
Yeah, yeah, the
that was
Maraudation
another
issue.
really brutal scene
Yeah,
where the two of them just beat the snot out of Shaw and wouldn't even let him resurrect himself to
yeah.
get his body back. He was in a wheelchair. It was
He was
pretty
crippled for
horrible.
a while, yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that at the other end
So he
here.
still he still wants to get his revenge on them. So I guess
Mhm.
that's still out there lurking. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
next book is Excalibur
Everybody's favorite.
by Teenie Howard.
And who was the artist on this one? Boy, it's a great artist. It's this is one of the prettier books that's going. What the hell is his name? I've probably written his name a million times.
Marcus Toe?
Marcus Toe, yes, a beautiful, beautiful book. Just Toe does. I think it's Toe. It might be two. I don't know, but does gorgeous faces, absolutely gorgeous faces,
Indeed.
and almost makes the book worth looking at. Almost, because it's not a great book, in my opinion.
Yeah, it wasn't so much for me. I had trouble following it sometimes, and I wasn't sure how much of that was me not knowing the characters and how much of that was the book itself having
The
problems.
book didn't have much. I mean, there was a direction there, but we talk about connective tissue. This was just. Actually, we talked about connective tissue off the air. Sorry, folks. This is this is just like scenes that I think the creative wanted to put in there and didn't really care whether or not we like got there. You talk about building a house, and
Hmm.
we can build a house. We can put up 4 walls. It looks like a house, but a stiff wind comes and knocks it down because you didn't build a
Yeah, a
foundation.
lot of it felt like scenes from a role playing game
Very much,
party
very
where
much
it's a
so.
lot of fun. I guess there are podcasts where people just listen to other people play role playing
Like D and
games, which,
D, I believe it
yeah, which is not my thing. But I mean, if you're part of the game, that's fascinating. But for
for
me,
sure.
watching other people play that game, I'm just not
Not much
invested.
to it. Yeah, not much to it there. But that's a very good descriptor of Excalibur. I might be projecting, but it feels like Teeny wanted to be writing fantasy.
That
And
is, I think she's written other books outside of the X books where that is her wheelhouse.
okay, that's perfectly fine. And I'm not qualified to speak on how good a writer she is in that realm because fantasy books have never. I mean, outside of ElfQuest, which is odd because ElfQuest brought me into the fandom and it's very high fantasy. But
Hmm. Hmm.
outside of ElfQuest, I can't glom on to really any fantasy. I've tried Conan, doesn't do it for me. Red Sonja doesn't do it for me. Even like DC's Warlord. As much as I want to like something like that, it just doesn't speak to me. And Excalibur, it was very much in that mold where it was. I think. I think the books can be a little too Krakoa centric. So anytime we get off Krakoa, it's a little bit of a refresher.
Make the
But
world bigger. It's
yeah,
right.
but when we leave Krakoa to go to friggin' Otherworld, eh,
Yeah, that most of this book tends to take place in the other world. So to just give the big picture, this is really the Betsy Braddock book in my mind,
oh, 100%.
right?
100%.
So she is the brother of the old Captain Britain, Brian Braddock,
Hmm.
and they have this other crazy, super powerful brother. What's his
That
name again?
weirdo Jamie
The
Braddock.
weirdo Jamie Braddock, right? Who has one of those kind of
reality
vague
warper.
reality warping kind of power. So
Yeah,
super powerful, can kind of do whatever the writer needs
whatever
him
they
to do.
need them to do,
Right.
for sure, for sure.
So the thing that kicks this off is uh, Brian losing the Captain Britain mantle and
Mhm.
Betsy gaining it.
Yes.
And a lot of the rest of the book is Betsy having to prove over and over again that she deserves to still have it.
And it's way, way, way too much of that. I mentioned, protesting too much here. Every single issue of this book was like Betsy
Very
saying,
defensive.
"Yeah, I'm Captain Britain now." It reminds me of like going to a Burger King while I was a teenager and having the new manager on duty tell everybody that she was the new manager constantly, and it's like, if you have to keep telling people you're in charge, you ain't,
It's not helping. Yeah.
you ain't. Yeah. So
Now
if
this was an important book early on because we knew we were going to X of Swords. X of Swords was
Sure,
set up in
from the get
Hoxpox,
go, from the get
and
go.
we knew that it was tied up with Otherworld somehow. So we knew this book was important for that.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
this is where we see them going to Otherworld, and this is where they set up
The foul and fair
the
kingdoms.
different kingdoms, and where we meet Saturnine, who I guess was an established character, right? She's
She's
been
been
around a
around
long time.
forever. Yeah, she's been around since the Captain Britain UK books. Yeah, she's been around for a bit. And we
Archetype of like the fairy queen, where she has her own ways, her own machinations, but we as mortals can't really understand what she's trying to do. It's supposed to be kind of strange and weird, and
yeah,
in the old meaning of the word queer,
yeah.
that kind of stuff.
And she's drawn to look exactly like Emma Frost. So when you see her, you're gonna
It was
think, wait a
difficult.
minute, wait a minute.
Sometimes it was hard to tell. Yeah, if there's
It's
a
very
dragon in the
true.
background, it's probably Saturnine. That's all you
Hopefully,
know. Right.
hopefully, unless it's Lockheed, I suppose. But yeah, the foul and fair kingdoms here, vaguely interesting from a world building perspective. But it also kind of reminds me. I'm sure anybody listening is familiar with Marvel What If. That's like a thing now. I mean, they have a stupid Disney Plus show about it, right? Isn't there a What If show?
Oh, there is. Yep. At
Okay,
least there was.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so we exploit the crap out of that. But there was a comic book, believe it or not. Some of these Disney Plus shows are based on comic books. And so there was a What If comic book back in the long ago. Ran for a long, long time. There were a couple of volumes of it. And the way they started was basically asking the question, what if such and such happened? And it was interesting to go through, and as probably as a writer study, an artist study, and a reader study, we're seeing all this stuff that flies in the face of what we think happened, or what we know happened, I should say. But then it got to the point where it's like, what if Peter Parker forgot to have breakfast this day and suddenly the world ends? It's like, huh?
Right.
It was just different flavors of crap. And that's kind of what these fair and foul kingdoms are. It's like, well, here's a fantasy
Hmm.
world with vampires. Here's a
Yep.
fantasy world with zombies.
I think at least for me, it read again like not just like D&D, but like a D&D source book.
Big time,
Like
but a lazy one.
here's all these things that if you want to make your own story about, here's
Hmm.
like a framework to do it in.
Yeah,
But it was all framework and no story.
basically, because well, frankly, a lot of these kingdoms were not interesting enough to have a story told about them because they were just. I mean, it goes back to the Hickman problem where it's like I'm going to introduce a bunch of characters that are going to be vaguely unique, vaguely cool, and they're going to have neat names. Do we care about them? No. No. It's like, oh, here's this antler-headed alien. Care about him. Make me care about him.
Mhm.
Here's 10 new characters here. They're all going to hold a sword. Care about all of them. Why am I going to care about the lizard man? Why am I going to care about the Anubis guy? Make me care about them. So we get like the baby's first Grant Morrison's multiversity map here. It's like circles. Here's the fair and foul kingdoms. Care about them. Well, you got to make us care about them. You got to do
Yep.
something
So
to make these interesting.
what is it that people should know about Excalibur? We know it involves Otherworld, where Saturnine's in charge of things, and she
Hmm.
has her weird goals.
Hmm.
She seems to want her old Captain Britain back.
She wants Betsy's
She wants
beautiful blonde British brother Brian back.
right. So she is very much part of the whole "you're not the real Captain Britain"
Hmm.
idea. She wants Brian back. So this is all going to come back in X of Tens,
Yep.
X of Swords. But
X of Tens is
is
fine.
yeah, is there anything else that people really need to know about this book?
Yes, Apocalypse
Oh
looms
yes.
large in this one. This is where he takes the name. He want, we don't know how it's pronounced. That's how humans pronounce
Right.
Krakoan, I guess.
It's some weird looking capital A with some
With
squiggles and
yeah, with
tildes
like
around
a
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
with brackets, and it's interesting. But
He
his
again he wants to separate himself from his human given name. He wants to use a mutant name, so
yeah,
he makes his name look all mutanty.
all mutanty. Yeah, so he is getting into magic. This book is very, very deep in magic. We also have Richter from New Mutants, X Force, Richter, X Factor, later years, and he
Hmm.
is having problems controlling his seismic powers. So he is kind of rescued from mundanity by Apocalypse and taken under his wing and shown the ways of magic.
He's another character I always get mentally confused with kind of the DC version of the guy who can move Earth around.
Vibe or
No,
Geoforce? Geoforce.
Geoforce, because
Okay,
he's
Counterspell.
popped up recently in some Batman stuff. So he's very much
He was an
top of mind
outsider,
now. He
yeah.
was an outsider.
Yeah.
His sister was involved
Terra,
in the whole
Judas
Teen
Contract.
Titans Judas contract
Yeah.
thing there. So yeah, so this is not him. This is not
This ain't
Geoforce.
Geoforce. Yeah.
It is kind of like Geoforce again. In my
Very
not
similar
having
powers.
read so many comics, guy, the two Earth moving guys. Oh, they're just the same guy, but no, they're
May
not.
as well be. May as well be
May
in
as
some
well be. So
situations.
he
But
gets, yeah, he gets kind of as an acolyte of Apocalypse on the magic side of
and he
things.
becomes like a
A druid.
druid. Yeah,
Yeah.
a druid. And this is over on X Labs. I have a few listeners from. I don't know if we call it England, Britain, or the UK. I call them all three, and I'm sure I'm wrong all three times. But I guess it's a rule for folks from over there not to tell us dumb Americans which one we want to use. So I'm sure I always get it wrong, but they took great offense to the fact that like Teenie Howard's approximation of their homeland was druids on every corner, ma- a magical sorcerer in
Right.
Parliament. It,
Anytime you're there, you see Big Ben in the
of
background,
course,
no matter where in the country you are. Right. One
it's,
of
it's
those
the
things.
way it works, right? I mean, the statue. I can see the Statue of Liberty from here in Arizona. It's just the way it goes. But yeah, it's yeah, Apocalypse's story is mildly interesting.
Yeah.
Gambit, Rogue, and Jubilee are part of the team as well. Rogue is put
Right.
into a coma like right away. I don't remember exactly how, but she is KO'd for several issues until she comes back. Apocalypse dies. He sacrifices himself, and
That's right.
he's
He kind of taunts someone into killing him, right?
yeah, something like that. But then he is brought back immediately, and this is when this
Because
is
they
only
need to use his bones and the bones of the other
externals
externals.
to build the gate.
Right, because the gate needs to be powered. This gate needs to be super duper powered to get to
Mhm.
Otherworld. So he wants to build this gate between the two worlds because this is all part of his "I want to get my family back"
Yeah, I
situation.
want to get the island back together. I want to get the family back. But when he dies and is brought back, this is kind of what opens Magneto and Professor X's eyes to the fact that Excalibur is even a thing in the first place. Like they know that there are people running around. They know that Betsy's dressing like Captain Britain now, but they don't really know the goal of this team. And the one thing that I will give Teeny credit for is the interpersonals between the characters has been quite solid when she's actually done
Okay.
it.
Hmm.
Um, all the Betsy Kvetchin aside, where every time we see her, we're reminded that she and Quanon shared a body and yada yada yada, and that I am Captain Britain now. You will call me Captain Britain. I will constantly prove that I'm Captain Britain, despite the fact that I'm not really proving a whole lot of anything. The interpersonals are pretty good. Betsy acting, doing what she's doing for Apocalypse, eh, because I guess it's easier just to play along than fight it. And maybe
Hmm.
she thinks that there is. She obviously sees value in Otherworld since she is the representative, the 616 is representative of Otherworld at this point.
Right.
The A lot of trust, a lot of distrust, a lot of going along, not to make waves, a lot of shady, underhanded kind of stuff that maybe comes back later on, or at least it calls Betsy's character into question insofar as being completely honest and truthful with the Quiet Council. Does come back around, but the Quiet Council is not very truthful themselves. that kind of stuff was kind of interesting. There was a two-part break from Otherworld, which I loved.
Called the Warwolves.
Yeah, it had the team on a like doing a fox hunt in on Cullen Bloodstone's lawn, searching for werewolves because they were part of the apocalypse plan,
Yeah, there's like an ingredient for a spell or
something
something.
like that. Yeah, but it was fun because we got to see these characters who, I mean, Gambit, Rogue, and Jubilee don't belong anywhere near Otherworld. They really just don't. So we get to see them act more like themselves. Betsy, I mean, I don't think she belongs. I don't think anybody belongs in Otherworld. I think we should really just put bricks over that
Hmm.
over that gateway and just leave
Yeah,
it.
it was kind of for much of the first part of Dawn of X. They kept saying, "Oh, maybe we should just blow up that gate." And
Yeah,
me
and
as a reader was saying,
fingers
"Yes, blow up the
crossed.
gate." But no,
Yes,
they never blew up the gate.
they
So
never blew.
to wrap up Excalibur, read this book if you want to see how we lead into X of Swords.
Hmm.
Read this book if you want to see Apocalypse in his learning to do magic and what he's trying to accomplish situation. Read this book if you're really interested to see what X-Men in a Dungeons and Dragons world would look like. Other than that,
Skip it.
probably not super relevant to what's coming up. I can't imagine that the Eternals are going to be connected to Otherworld.
Oh
God,
God,
God, I hope not.
don't even
I'm
put that
sorry,
into
I
the
even said
universe.
that out
No,
loud.
don't even put
Okay,
that out
so
there.
that's Excalibur.
That's
Next, we'll go
Excalibur.
on to New Mutants Volume 4,
Hmm.
mostly written by Ed Brisson, with a little Hickman there at the beginning, because he had his own kind of mini arc mixed in, but mostly an Ed Brisson thing.
Yeah, I think it was 5 Hickmans, 7 Brissons, I think. But this was kind of an interesting one because this one felt like probably the most comfortable early on for me as a, longtime tenured ex reader, because it had characters I could recognize acting in a way that I could recognize. This was the original New Mutants, or a grip of the original New Mutants out on a space adventure. And very neat that they actually included a couple of Generation X characters here. Generation X, for folks who don't know, because Marvel doesn't really talk about Generation X all that often, it was kind of the 90s follow up. I mean, you can tell by the name, Generation X. They actually called the team that, which is ridiculous, but endearing
I,
in a
I
way.
guess once there was a concept in the wider world called Gen X, it was
Yeah.
inevitable that Marvel was going to use it.
Yeah, and actually they were almost beaten to the punch by Image Comics. Gen 13 was originally called Gen X.
Oh, did not know that.
Yeah, and they actually had promotional material out, ads. They all said Gen X, and Marvel said, "No, no, no, you
It's got
can't
an
do
X in
that."
it. We own
Yeah,
everything with an
we
X in it.
own every sort of permutation that has an X, and so they changed to Gen 13, which is basically Gen X anyway, because Generation X is like the 13th generation of modern times or whatever. So
Okay.
same thing, X equals 10, also equals 13, I guess.
Hmm.
But yeah, so Generation X was a really fun team for me because they were my age, they were my peers, my cohorts in in age.
Okay.
I was 14 years old when it came out. These characters were all around 13, 14, 15 years old, so they were my
Hmm.
people. And we had Chamber and Mondo. Mondo is a weird one. Mondo was not really a part of Generation X, but I can't assume that anybody writing or reading X Men comics now knows anything about that, so I won't even go into it. But Chamber was there. Chamber was definitely a member of Generation X. He was briefly brought up to the X Men and then put back in his place. He was a graduate, but didn't work out so well. In the late '90s, graduates into the X Men didn't really stick quite the way they do now.
Hmm.
But really fun story. It was a heist story basically, right? It was they were with
Yeah.
the
Well,
tagging with the Starjammers.
this was as a new reader. This one was harder for me to get into
I
because it was a
bet.
whole bunch of new characters that had their own kind of dynamic, and it had a kind of a silly, don't take us too seriously feel to it,
Fourth
which
wall
took
breaky in a bit
yeah
in a
took
way
me a
with
couple issues of that for me to really get into and say, okay, I'm part of this. I kind of felt excluded at the beginning, like, oh,
I could see that.
this isn't my thing.
I could see that.
It brought me in. So like, oh, Sunspot. What's his actual
Bobby
name?
DaCosta.
Bobby DeCosta. He's an interesting character. Super. He's like a rich
Egotist,
guy,
yeah.
super ego, but kind of
Humble in a
he's
way.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure. Is that back and forth? He's self-deprecating, but in a
Mm.
way that he's just trying to make himself look like he's self-deprecating because he thinks it'll make him be better.
more
He,
relatable, and yeah.
yeah. He's always making money off of everything. Every
Mhm.
time he does anything, he comes out richer on the other end.
For sure.
He thinks he's God's gift to every species of woman out
Yep.
there.
Bird women, human
Which
women. Yeah.
right. So it took me a while to see the humor in him in an okay kind of endearing kind of way, but it got me there.
It's kind of like a distillation of the character of Bobby DaCosta. I think that's a Hickmanism from when he like shoehorned Cannonball and Sunspot into the Avengers
Okay.
back during like the Infinity era, or pre Secret Wars 2015.
I didn't know that. Sunspot on the Avengers would be interesting
He
dynamic to
was
see.
actually yeah, because he took the role of Citizen V, which is a Golden Age character, which it was a name that was taken by several different characters over the years. Baron Zemo posed as
Okay.
him for the launch of the
Oh, I think that
Thunderbolts.
was referenced at least once in New Mutants.
I think so, because he was the
So that's
leader
what
of
that
the
was. I didn't know. I
U.S.
had no idea what
Avengers.
that was.
Yeah, he was the leader of the U.S. Avengers, which was part of the glut of Avengers books that actually finally got me to pull the plug on my Avengers completionism. It's like,
Hmm.
here's Occupy Avengers, here's this event. It's like, come on, stop, please, just stop it.
So we get these characters kind of going out, and they're accompanying
The Starjammers.
the Starjammers, right? Who is
Mhm.
this the Summers father and
Yeah,
weird
Chris
alien
Summers.
connections,
Yeah,
kind of space
Hepzibah, John.
pirates,
Yeah.
and this is where they end up stealing the king egg that the
Bruity.
right. So this is the one that the king egg ends up coming back to. We talked about last time on the regular X-Men book that kicks off that brood stuff.
Yeah, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so then we get that, and then we come back to Earth, and then it's really about. I think the theme is like, where do these young characters fit in on Krakoa? What do they have to do? I mean, they're not going off to college. They don't
Nope.
really have a job. So
Mm-mm.
what does it mean to be young on Krakoa, and what is your purpose?
And boy, it was jarring when we got here, though, because I think Hickman kind of loaded his plate a little too heavy at the start of this.
Hmm.
So we had like 3 issues of this classic New Mutant space jaunt, and then we were just like on the farm, like a new story just started without the other one ending,
Yes,
and
it felt like two completely separate series
it was,
that was
yeah,
published in like alternate months with the same title on the front,
yeah,
but there was
but
no
no connective
communication between
tissue.
them.
Yeah, it's like we had this story with Armor, one of the Joss Whedon characters. So of course we have to say she's better than the rest because Joss Whedon, I suppose. A little snark there, I suppose, but
I'll
she
allow
was
it.
yeah, she was leading a crew to Beak's farm, the Bowhusk farm. Now, Beak and Angel Salvador were Grant Morrison characters, part of the special class that Zorn taught over in New X-Men back around the turn of the century, maybe 2001, 2002. And they got together and they had some fly babies. Uh, Angel Salvador, they brought her in calling her Angel just to confuse all of us because we have an Angel already. But her wings were fly wings. So she was a little bit more,
Hmm.
she was a little less angelic. Her
Hmm.
name literally was, was Angel, her birth name, her government name. So they just called her Angel. And she was like a tough, street tough kind of kid and fell for the bird headed kid Beak. And they moved to the farm in Nebraska. And then anti mutant people came and tried to kill everybody. And this was the introduction of a theme, or not a theme, but a concept from the early days here called Dox, DOX, which was basically the National Enquirer for mutants, or like a TMZ, I
Yeah,
suppose, for mutants.
sure.
And it was
Bleeding
something,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, basically. And it was something that immediately caught my imagination because I thought it was a very interesting story that could be told here. We've got like mutants are this suddenly this very very powerful race on the planet, a real straw that stirs the drink, and it would stand to reason that there would be some muckrakers out there. There'd be people who were either super fans. We've seen cultists who were really really into the X-Men and really really into mutant culture. It would stand to reason that there would be deterrents as well, trying to act as paparazzi and just really stirring the crap. and that was docs. And I mean, docs, we know docs in the internet lingo as something very similar to that. So, you're giving away people's information, stuff like that. So, very interesting, but kind of fell flat. Do you remember how that all played out?
I remember it being set up. I don't remember it ending very well.
It didn't end very well at all. It had like Magic basically went to Doc's office and threatened everybody.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That
Magic's
was it.
another character who is, I think, a lot like Emma, where she has to be shown to be
The tough.
always the coolest, baddest character around. And
And that's another one that's kind of a distillation where like that was one of my main bugbears about the space story is that like we had Emma there, not Emma, we had Magic there, and she'd be like facing off against an alien, and she's like, I don't know if I want to f you or kill you, and it's like, what?
Mhm.
Why are you talking that way? You really shouldn't be. But that's just been her character now. Her character is like this, like two-dimensional, I'm going to kill you or f you sort of character, and it's a shame. It's a real shame. But that's the way we make comics in current year, I suppose.
Okay, so we had that, and then we had this is where Vita Ayala came in, right?
Following Exoswords, yes.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's when it came in, and I mean, might as well mention it now because we don't have a whole lot else to say about New Mutants.
Mhm.
Is that she brought in? Well, was it with her that brought in Cosmar, or did Cosmar come in before she took over?
Cosmar was a Brisson character.
Okay, so
Cosmar was
Cosmar is a character who's actually kind of becoming not a main character, but more of a main character than a lot of
she's
the
no longer
newly made
wallpaper.
characters.
Yeah, she's no
Right.
longer
So
wallpaper.
her thing was she was in Russia, correct? That's where they
Yes,
rescued her from?
Russia or Ukraine, somewhere around there.
Right. Ugh.
Yeah,
And
never mind.
she's another one of those
Reality
reality
warper.
warpers, and she couldn't control her power, and it was just doing all sorts of bad stuff to people around her because she couldn't stop making the whole world go all kind of screwy.
Mm-hmm.
And she even like messed up her own physical body, so
Her
she has this
body.
very misshapen face, a very strange look to her.
She's very
So they do
circus mirror. Yeah.
yeah, they do eventually kind of help her control herself, and she comes back to Krakoa to live on
Mhm.
Krakoa. And a lot of the theme here is that we have a group of young mutants who look weird.
Yeah.
To me, they really felt almost like a new version of the Morlocks,
Very Morlockian.
where
Mm-hmm.
we have they're mutants. Everyone agrees they're mutants, but they can't pass as they can't either pass or look better than regular humans, right? A lot
Mm-hmm.
of mutants either they can look completely human
Yeah.
or they're not looking human, but they have these gorgeous wings on their back. So
Mm-hmm. They're very
so
aesthetic. Yeah.
right, very aesthetic. And these kids not so much. It was like No Girl was one of them.
Yeah.
uh
What's his name?
Rain
And
Boy.
Rainboy, Anole. It was
Right.
they were really brought in post Exosword.
Yes, but
So
she
that
became part of that group.
yeah, I called them the Shadow Kings irregulars because
Yes, and then we get
they
to the
come out of the
whole
Shadow Kings,
yeah, that Shadow King story.
which is still going. No, it's not still
No,
going on, but
they wrapped it up.
yeah, it feels
And
like it went on
once Vita
forever.
Ayala came in, the dialogue became to me very, very group therapy. Like
Very preachy.
if
Yeah,
if Excalibur was like watching people play D&D, this was like watching people go to group therapy with each other. Which again,
and
if you're part of it and it's important to you, hey, good for you. But I didn't find it compelling as a
and
fictional narrative to
and
to
if you
read.
have any kind of psych experience, it'll drive you insane because
Oh,
it's
okay.
another distillation, another very convenient.
I can't apply those concepts directly to my own life. No.
It's very very inch deep, mile wide, and
Okay. And the other thing that's going to happen here is Madeline Pryor is going to come back in like the current issues of New Mutants. So
yeah,
that is the only thing that's kind of bringing me back to saying, oh, well, maybe something fun's going to happen here. And we'll talk about Madeline Pryor because she comes through another book.
yeah, we'll
But
get to that.
I don't think there's much else super relevant from New Mutants to the crossover. I don't
I
know that
would
these
doubt it.
characters are going to be in there. They don't
Yeah,
have a New Mutants crossover listed on the solicits, as far as I can tell. So yeah, read New Mutants if these are characters you grew up with, like Chris did. If you want to kind of see what happens to the young characters who need to find a place on Krakoa, Other than that, I think this is a book you don't have to read to understand the main story. Would you
Well,
agree?
I mean, New Mutants actually fell off Marvel's schedule for 4 months, and nobody noticed. I only noticed because it's like because I'm very very anal about what books are coming in, and it's like, hey, I haven't discussed an issue of New Mutants in a while. Oh, that's because it hasn't come out in four
Was this
months.
part of the lives and deaths of Wolverine, or was this a separate issue?
Both. It
Okay.
was it went on hiatus like everything else did, but before that, it was just not there. It just fell off the schedule.
Hmm.
There's
So
maybe supply chain stuff.
so
Who
okay,
knows?
not a horrible book.
Not
It had some
essential.
things I didn't like about it, but not essential to understanding the main story.
No, no,
But had
no.
some cool art.
Certainly, certainly. Now, a book that is kind of essential is the book that I consider like the legitimate flagship of the early days of the post Hoxpox run, and that's X Force Volume Six.
Indeed.
Because stuff actually happened, and there was a team.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it was a team called X Force, and it was the same as the name of the book, and we didn't find out later that there wasn't one, so that was
There
nice.
wasn't one.
Unlike
Yeah.
X Men. So yeah, so X Force is the mutant.
CIA.
Sometimes they say CIA.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the strike force. If you need somebody to go out and
It's like the wet works. It's yeah. It's
right, if you need somebody to go out and do bad things undercover for the service of Krakoa, you call those people X Force.
yes. They are your fixers basically, and it was there were a lot of very very interesting things about this run, and I give the writer Ben Percy. I give him a lot of guff for using some shortcuts in the using info pages instead of as information, just as script pages that they don't feel like drawing. Very very exploity of the info pages here. He also has he I compared it to that episode of Friends where Joey can only afford one volume of the encyclopedia. So he
Yeah,
tries to
you got to work it
corral.
in, right. Work
Yeah,
everything that begins with M into
yeah,
conversation all the time.
absolutely. So I get the feeling via Percy's writing here that before he writes an issue, he discovers an amazing tidbit of knowledge that he wants to share. Whether it be like, oh, I discovered this myth, this Greek myth, so I'm going to work it in. Or I discovered that this
Yeah,
volcano erupted,
it does
so
feel like he's writing backwards. It's not like he's writing a
oh yeah,
story and thinks, you know what classical illusion
yeah.
would add some depth to the story I'm already writing. No, it feels more like he's got this illusion he wants to work in,
So you got
and
to
then he
get there.
kind of makes a story to make it work.
Yeah, that's and I mean it's very formulaic. The
Yeah, that's
dialogue isn't always.
actually Jim and I were just talking very much about that in Hell Rider or Ghost Rider. I always call it Hell
Oh,
Rider. Ghost Rider he's writing now,
oh, that's
and it
Percy too. Yeah,
has it has similar issues like that.
yeah, for
Like
sure.
he a theme very much technology gone wrong is very much a theme
Okay,
he likes to write about, and he makes it come up in this issue even though it doesn't
doesn't
really
fit
belong there. Right.
organically. Yeah, and I mean I think he's improved quite a bit over the years because back last time my last go round with Weird Science, I was doing the Teen Titans book that Ben Percy was writing, and that was a slog. Folks who were listening back then will remember every single issue had somebody either threatening to quit the team, quitting the team, getting thrown off the team, complaining
Yeah.
they were kicked off the team, complaining that they want to leave the team.
Yeah,
It
it
was
almost
yeah,
feels like the writer's got some issues he's kind of
working
working
out.
out on the page there.
It's true. It's true. Now,
So X Force, the biggest thing that happened early on in X Force is we see a strike force come in from outside, some bad guys from we don't know where exactly,
mhm,
and they manage to show up as they all look like they're Domino. So the island recognized them as mutants. They arrive on Krakoa and they head out to kill Professor X, and they succeed
they do.
in killing Professor X. I think
Yeah,
that was the cliffhanger at issue 1 of X Force,
the
wasn't it?
very, very first issue. Yeah, this is a Xeno. We would be told eventually they were Xeno, and they had kidnapped Domino, and they took chunks of her skin. They peeled her and grafted her skin
Yikes.
on these characters, which I mean, X Force. I think X Force gets a little bit of license for brutality since X Force is a darker book,
It makes
tone.
sense that this is where that would happen. Yeah.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, he was brought back very quickly, and without much incident. So we didn't really get a whole lot of tension
Yeah.
there.
Early on, a lot of the books were trying to do the whole, do we really mean it that death doesn't matter? Can people really come back? Yes, they
Yeah,
can. So
Yeah,
this was like the apotheosis of that. It's Professor X, one of the main people needed to do the
wearing the
resurrection,
Cerebro helmet.
wearing
Yeah,
the cerebro helmet. Can we still do resurrection if he's the one who's dead? And it
yeah,
turned out very quickly, oh yeah, sure,
yeah.
not a
We've got
problem.
backups. Yeah,
Barely an inconvenience.
yeah.
Yes.
We've got not only data backups, but we got helmet backups as well. So no
Helmets
worries.
and personnel, right?
Absolutely.
You never want your organization to depend on just one person where if they quit, no one can log into the database.
Yes, you need the contingency, and they did have it. A few of the like major themes here. We talked about Domino a moment ago. Domino, she had started a kind of on again, off again relationship with Colossus during Cable and X Force back in the Marvel Now days,
Okay.
and they had a moderately sweet story together. But here we had when X Force started, Captain Kate and the Marauders actually brought Colossus back from Russia. He was in some sort of a to do. We didn't really get an explanation as to how traumatic this to do was immediately. All we know is that it really messed with Peter. You know, it messed with him pretty
Right.
hardcore. So he was wildly depressed. He was just not, I'd say not the same guy, but for as long as I've been reading, Peter Rasputin has been a sad sack most of the time. I mean,
Hmm.
when I started reading,
Yeah.
magic
It's
was
kind of
killed.
that
So
trope of the really big, really strong, really tough guy, but he's sad.
yeah, he's just a putty
He
cat.
likes to paint.
He does indeed. So he was really screwed up, and he goes to his lightning rod, which was Domino, who was also very screwed up. She was just peeled, you know, like a piece of fruit, and
That'll ruin your day. Yeah.
that's not a good day. She'd be rescued by Quentin Quire and Wolverine, who were other members of X Force. But Colossus and Domino would talk, and it brought up an interesting concept. And this was right around the time that the flagship book was doing the Crucible issue. I think it was right actually a month before the Crucible issue, and they started talking about trauma and suicide. You know, we didn't know that suicide was the sort of governmental no-no that it was, where
Right.
it's like, don't do this or else you're at the back of the line. We didn't know all that just yet, but we also were still feeling our getting our land legs here as so far as the resurrection protocols were, from soup to nuts. We don't know exactly what's the deal here just yet, but they're talking about, wouldn't it be great if we could just go to sleep and just never wake up again, or wake up as different people with different experiences, different lives, different everything. And that's where we get Domino saying that, hey, if I die, I want to be brought back as is. I want to be brought back with
She
my
was
memories, with my
insistent on that.
trauma.
Yes.
Yeah. And we do find out that when she does die, she is brought back without her trauma. And it was a pretty great reaction from Peter when he realizes this. And they didn't, and I mean,
Has that ever been followed up on? Like who made that decision and why it happened?
I'm sure there was some sort. It might have been in an info page. Ben Percy does use a lot of those, but I usually don't give him credit for subtlety. But the way this was handled was quite subtle, at least on the page, on the comic page.
Okay.
There may have been info page stuff that totally blows a hole in this, but yeah. But Colossus looks like almost betrayed, almost not knowing if Domino changed her mind at the end of the day, almost not knowing if the five did it of their own volition or from orders on high.
Hmm.
Very well done stuff here, and very human. Just the discussions here and how trauma can change people.
Yeah, it did a good job of using this science fictional idea of the mutant resurrection to
Hmm.
actually comment on
Facilitate this commentary.
real
Yeah.
human emotion and experience.
And actually having that way out, this literal way out. It was very well done.
Mhm.
Another one of my main takeaways was the depiction of Beast, which
Yes.
has been one of the more contested and conflicting among tenured and I guess new X fans alike.
So he becomes like one of the main people running X Force. At least he certainly thinks he's completely running X Force.
He's like yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he thinks that he's got everything under control. There's like one issue where he compares himself to the conductor of a symphony, where all the other members are like instruments in the symphony, and he's the one telling them all what to do. They don't need to know the big picture, right? The
Mhm.
viola player doesn't need to know what the timpani player is doing. They just need to do their job. But the conductor, he's the one in charge of everything.
Yeah.
And he gets like an egomania kind of idea where he always presents himself as he's doing everything for Krakoa. He's serving
For the
Krakoa.
greater
He's
good.
serving the greater good, the best interest of everyone. And he's the only one who really knows those best interests. Yeah, sure, Charles and Magneto, yeah, they think that they're in charge, but really they don't have like the nerve to do what really has to be done. And he's
Mhm.
the one willing to do what has to be done to save the nation.
Absolutely.
And
And
he does some really underhanded, awful things that he thinks have to be done. And we're really letting us see how much does it really have to be done, or how much is this beast just indulging his own whims and his own sense of power.
it's true. It's true. And this was received wildly different ways, mostly negative, from what I've
I
read
think
and
a
from what
lot
I've
of
seen.
X fans have their own particular version of what the way Beast should be written. Kind of, I'm
Yeah.
sure depending on where they came into the fandom, whether he was, the big bouncing, wisecracking guy, wears the glasses and makes some jokes and uses big words. That's one version of Beast. And then there's these other more darker versions that other people like. And this is very much more of that scheming, very smart, but not as smart as he thinks he is version
Hmm.
of Beast.
Yeah, and I think I might be in a minority in really really liking it. And I can contextualize that in a bit here. Beast was always kind of he's always been the one with the onus to fix things. He is, the big brain. He is the
Yeah,
smart guy there.
he's got a Reed Richards kind of part to him.
Basically. So he was always the one who, anytime something bad would happen to the mutants or the X-Men, it's like, oh, well, Beast will fix it. I mean, we talked about the legacy virus. The legacy
Right,
virus
right.
was, quick and dirty as mutant AIDS. It's an incurable disease that's going to kill whatever mutant it infects. So we spent the better part of a decade with Beast trying to solve the legacy virus whenever they remembered that the legacy virus was a problem that needed to be solved. And you'd see Beast holding a test tube or sitting at a computer going, damn it, I wish I could figure out the legacy virus. Or it would be the New Year's issue, and his resolution is, this year I'm going to cure the legacy virus.
Hmm.
But he's got to work within a framework. He can't really, you can think about like a Dr. Frankenstein, a Dr. Moreau. You could work in. I'm trying to think here, how to compare this to real world. I mean, there have been atrocities done during wars where doctors have done things very, very unethical to test the lengths or the strengths of the human body. Stuff that really should never be done. And Beast couldn't do those things to do what he needed to do. He was handcuffed by his own morality, by his own compass, by the fact that he was a public hero. He could not do the things that needed done to cure things expediently. And I mean, this is not a commentary on real world sort of stuff here. This is
Sure.
just in the comic, fantastical Marvel universe. So Beast was handcuffed. He could only do what he could do, and what the result was is he didn't do anything. He couldn't solve the legacy virus. Moira McTaggart would eventually solve the legacy virus on her own way later on. Beast didn't really do a whole heck of a lot except waste a lot of his own time and frustrate himself.
Hmm.
Jump ahead to House of M. No more mutants. We enter the endangered species era. Beast is put on point again. Fix this. How are you going to fix this? Fix the fact that, we're down to 198 mutants from millions. We're down to 198. It's all up to you, Beast. Fix it. Moore is dead. It's all up to you. And what does he do? Not a whole heck of a lot, because he can't do a whole heck
Hmm.
of a lot.
So I guess you could see why in this new era where he has all this power now and the
He's
mutants
free.
are back and in on top of things, he doesn't want to go back to those old days. And you could see
Mhm.
why he'd be willing to do these things. So this, I think one of the purposes of this book is to raise those questions about
Should he?
acting in
Yeah.
the what seems to be the right thing to do versus norms and institutions,
For
and
sure.
should you let norms and institutions stand in the way even when you think it's really important to do something else?
Absolutely. Yeah. So he has, I mean, X Force being delivered to him on a silver platter is the ability to work under the, away, under the, the cloak of darkness
Right,
here.
like they are very much on the page literally told the laws of Krakoa
Do
don't
not
really
apply.
apply to you.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm. X Force.
other places get kind of hand waved about that, but explicitly X Force, you have the ability to ignore those when you think it's necessary, and
Hmm.
Beast is the one who decides when he thinks it's necessary.
Absolutely. So that was one of the main like takeaways from
Mhm.
the early and even into today's X Force. We have Beast doing questionable things.
Yeah, that's I kept waiting for Beast to get his comeuppance. And he
Hmm.
kind of does in little pieces now and then, but it
Yeah.
felt like a roller coaster going up a big hill. You're waiting for the big crash downward, but we don't get that. We get
Nope. Just a little
little
dips.
boop, but
Yep.
then he keeps crawling back up again.
Hmm.
So he also was tied to suspecting all the Russians,
Yes.
right? So we know the Russians are the bad guys, and this was kind of inexplicable. It's weird because it's inexplicable, but then he turned out he was right. But anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it got a kind of triple reverse on that. So he decided to kind of, in a very ham-handed way, round up all the Russian mutants and question them,
Yep.
and not even like in a subtle way have a little chat with, but like
Frog marching them.
bring all the
Yep.
Russians in chains, just tie them up, and
That's it.
okay. So yeah,
It
but it does turn out that Colossus, I think, is the Colossus story come up in X Force, right? This is where we learn about what's
with
going
the
on with him.
chronicler. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
the Russian bad guys. What's the name of the Russian bad guy group? Are they part of?
They were kind of tied with Xeno, but not
Yeah,
totally.
they're kind of connected with Xeno, but they have this one guy called Chronicler
Hmm.
who's immune, who has some kind of power about the stories that he writes affect the real world.
Yeah, they can somehow see
Kind of
through them.
unclear.
Yeah.
Again, one of those
Very nebulous.
reality warping
Yeah.
things that does, but he does it by, we saw these letters pop up on info pages,
Hmm.
and he's writing a story about Colossus, but we didn't know at first who's writing the story or where
It
they're getting
could
the
have been.
information from.
Yeah, it could have been
And
Colossus writing his own story. It could have been
right.
Mikhail writing it. It
But
was.
it turns out to be this guy controlled by Mikhail
Yeah.
doing things. So they're kind of controlling Colossus. So
Hmm.
this group has somebody very much on the inside, guy who's now on the
On
Quiet
council.
Council.
Yeah.
So that's another shoe that hasn't dropped yet.
Hmm.
So it was bad for Beast to suspect all the Russians, and especially bad for Beast to suspect Colossus. But well, actually,
He was
he was
right.
right to he was right for the wrong reasons, but he shouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else people need to
One,
know from this
just one
for
last
going forward?
thing.
Okay,
Yeah,
hit
just
me.
one last thing, and it's Quentin Quire. Quentin
Yes.
Quire, a Grant Morrison character, another special class kid. We talk about the exploitation and the overuse of mutant death and the cheapening of mutant death. Quentin Quire was basically the Kenny from South Park in this book, where he would die
Yeah,
basically every
over and
issue,
over again.
and that's all well and good. It's like, okay, this is getting annoying. This is kind of just, oh, we get it. We get the
Mhm.
point. Then
Again,
Inferno happens.
every book wanted to poke at the limits of the new status quo, and
Yeah,
Quentin Quire was the one who they were used in this book because he died over and over again,
yeah.
and which was kind of crazy because he's super powerful,
He's an
and
Omega.
he'll
Yeah,
tell you how super powerful he
yeah,
is. Just listen to him for 5 minutes. It's like, how do you know someone's a vegan? Well, right,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. They do CrossFit too.
They did CrossFit. Yeah,
Right. So he gets brought back, and he's also used to talk about what can be done in resurrection because he kind of leaves standing orders to be brought back a little different every
he gets
time. He wants
modded.
to
Yeah,
he wants to change his hairstyle, or I forget what other issues he brings back, but like
he
little
wanted.
things.
He wanted like
It's like
his.
customizing your car.
Yeah, he wanted like his eyes to have perfect vision, but he still wanted to wear glasses as like a fashion statement. He wanted
Right.
to have like all of his nose hair removed. He wanted to have certain,
It was very much lampshading the ridiculous things that could happen under resurrection.
for sure, for sure. So he
But
was dying.
he also had a love interest, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah, one of the cuckoos. One of the
I forget
cuckoos.
which. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. One
Cable
of
was
the
dating
cuckoos.
one. He was dating one other one.
Yeah,
Maybe did a switch at some point. Who knows?
they very well might have. But like the thing with Quentin dying so often here, it was way too much for us as readers. But then Inferno starts and it gives us an actual timeline. And it's like, okay, Hoxpox was 2 weeks ago. Or so, it was like 2 months, I think. And it's like you realize that this dude has died hundreds of times in 2 months.
Mhm.
I don't know if we're supposed to think about that, but I
Again,
can't not.
ridiculously lampshaded.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But
And
yeah,
now X Force is going to have 2 issues tying into Judgment Day.
okay.
And in fact, there are just 2 issues, just 2 weeks apart. So apparently, it looks
Oh
like it's a
wow.
pretty big, again, according to the schedule on the Marvel website now, very
Yeah,
much up to revision.
for
But
sure.
yeah, so this will be part of it. And I would think Beast is probably the character most likely to factor into a crossover. Because if there's going to be a battle between mutants and other
Mhm.
groups, Beast is going to want to be in charge and probably getting his X Force compatriots involved as well.
Either that, because the X Force issues of our crossovers to this point have been very, very Red Sky crossover. They've been very X Force centric. I feel like during the Hellfire Gala, they were like the bouncers and like really didn't get involved with much
Right.
more than that. So I wonder if that'll be I wonder if that'll be the way this goes. Maybe it'll tie off with Wolverine, the other book that Percy writes. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But hopefully there'll be some good stuff involved here. But I think this takes us to our final of the Dawn of X launch books here. And what do we say? Last but least, hmm?
Oh, Fallen Angels. Yes. So
Volume
this
two.
this was announced, at least it seemed like it was announced as an ongoing, just like all the other
Yeah.
launch books. But they quickly decided or announced or revealed that no, it's just going to be a miniseries. And this was written by Brian Edward Hill,
Yeah.
who has written a few other things. He wrote a Killmonger miniseries that I really liked.
Hmm.
He wrote an indie book for, I think it was Image, called American Carnage that I
I
liked a
think
whole lot.
did he do the most recent Batman and the Outsiders as well? I think.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and he comes across on Twitter as a really nice guy, which makes it hard for me to say. I don't often like a lot of his other books. He
Hmm.
has a way of he his dialogue and his narration. He likes to say
It's
things that
purple.
sound like this
Hmm.
is very deep,
It's very purple.
very purple, and it doesn't. The story he's telling doesn't always support the depth that he thinks the dialogue should have. I
It
think is
almost
the
reads like a
issue.
parody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
that is
haven't
definitely
seen
the case
him
here.
I haven't seen his name on comics for a while now. He was doing some Buffy comics for whatever imprint had that license,
Boomer
but I
IDW.
think he's also done a lot of TV writing. Like he was on the some of the DC
Oh, the CW.
no, not the CW, the when DC was doing, what's the team they were doing?
Oh, the
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 F Batman.
the Teen Titans
The
stuff.
it
Yeah,
was it was
the
yeah, the
trio.
Titans thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was part of that writing team. So I think maybe he's moved back to
Oof.
mostly being a TV writer.
They can keep
But
them then.
Fallen Angels, this the important thing about Fallen Angels is that it sets up Hellions, which
Yeah,
is
that's
one of our
love it.
favorite things.
Yeah.
So the idea here is that Psylocke, she's back, right? Again, she used to be merged
Quanon.
with
Yeah.
Betsy Quanon. I sometimes call her QAnon, but I'm not going to call her that on the podcast because that would be too
Yo.
much. Definitely not going to say that. So what comes out is that she had a daughter. I
Mhm.
think this is the first time we learned she had a daughter, right? This is a new thing
I believe
introduced.
so. I believe
She had
so.
a
Her
daughter.
story was kept
It was
purposely
connected with
nebulous.
like the hand, maybe some
Yeah.
sort of ninja side of things. Brian Edward Hill loves the ninja side of things too.
Well, that's
So,
also where that is legit though.
okay,
That's
so that
because the
works.
Mandarin was involved and all that. Yeah. So
Okay. So she had this daughter, but then this AI called
or
Apoth
Apoth, one of those. Yeah.
killed the daughter, but then part of the consciousness of the daughter. Do we ever get a name for the daughter? I keep saying daughter.
I don't recall.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But that daughter is stored within like the data of Apoth.
Like Apoth. Yeah.
And at the end of Fallen Angels, because we're skipping right to the end,
Yeah.
that data falls into the hands of Mr. Sinister.
Yeah.
So it's
Betsy, or not
like,
Betsy, Quanon hands it over. Yeah.
right. So her daughter is in his care. So that's why she has to do whatever he
Is dead.
says because he's got this very much over her head and he's not shy at all about saying, you got to do what I say or else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really all you need to know about Fallen Angels, I think.
It was. I mean, yeah, we can. I mean, we can mention. I think last time we mentioned that X-23 was a part of it, and this is where she like shed her Wolverine skin before Hickman put her right back into it. Kid Cable was part of this. This was one of my very first introductions to the Kid Cable. I had he had he'd shown up while I was lapsed. I was out. So Kid Cable. This was my first run in with him. They also added Husk and Bling to the team.
That's right. They did show
Or,
up.
and I remember that they were like part of the promotional materials, but they showed up for like one issue and they stood. That was it. It's like, hey, you're Fallen Angels now. Okay, cool. You guys can go back home now. That's cool. Very much, probably the first miss of the line, I think. You know,
Yeah, and I think that was a pretty widely shared opinion. And there's definitely fans of some of the books we don't like as much. There's certainly Excalibur fans, certainly
and I
fans of
mean,
all these books.
it's
I don't know there's
also
a
yeah.
whole lot of Fallen Angel fans out there.
I mean, I have run into a couple. I mean, we are on the internet where the unpopular opinion is like the smart opinion.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, I really like Black Canary's Jazzercise costume. I don't care what anybody says. Oh, yeah, you're great. You're great. Dazzler's an interesting character. Yeah, yeah, fine, cool. But yeah, you have your your unpopular opinion that's shared by everybody else. But yeah, Fallen Angels was not not great. And it's funny because I was actually able to like follow this on the show where like I would gauge my listenership. And it's like, okay, we're doing X-Men, we're up here. Okay, X-Force up here, and Moroder's here. Fallen Angels, nobody listened. Okay, back up Excalibur, halfway there. Nobody wanted to hear about, read about, know
Yeah.
about
So
Fallen Angels.
read Fallen Angels if you really want to
It's
see
a quick read.
Psylocke's backstory.
Yeah, and it's a
If
quick
you're a
read.
big Brian Edward Hill fan and maybe the kinds of writing that hits my ear funny, maybe that's your thing.
Hmm.
It's definitely there. And yeah, it's a self-contained quick story, and that's Fallen
And
Angels.
I when I read it and I finished it, I think I considered it among the worst X-Men stories I ever read. Then I read X Corp and X Men Green, so I owe Fallen Angels a sincere apology.
Okay. So on that high note, I think we're going to take a quick break and then maybe come back with a little more.
Welcome back, everybody. We are still not done with the Dawn of X stuff just yet. We've got two more entire waves to go. We've got a wave that we're calling Wave 1.5, which consists mostly of miniseries and one shots. Then we've got Wave 2, which we don't get a whole heck of a lot of issues of these stories before we get to Exosword. So this will probably be a shorter segment to wrap
Yeah,
us up here.
this Wave 1.5, it seemed like Marvel wanted to make some connections between Krakoa and the rest of their universe. With
Certainly.
some, I'd say mixed success, I think is what we would give it.
With good intentions, with the
Right.
best of
It's
intentions.
clearly something that this is where you could tell it wasn't being run by a single point of view anymore, right? This wasn't Hickman having a vision and
Yeah,
carrying out that vision. You could definitely feel people pulling in different directions and kind of contradicting each other a little
and
bit.
yeah, not totally being on the same page here. Now the one book here that I wanted to read so bad from House of X #1 was a story that they're calling X Men plus Fantastic Four, or X Men and Fantastic Four, X Men versus Fantastic. X Men and Fantastic Four are a part of this book.
Yes.
And the whole premise of this book was that, well, Franklin is or was a mutant, and well, the mutants thought he should come home
He wasn't just a mutant. He was listed in one of the Hoxpox books on a
as an
list of
Omega.
Omega mutants. So,
Hmm.
one of the most important mutants, someone that the Krakoans really want to have part of their team, part of
For
their
sure.
world, part of their people, right?
Hmm.
Not only because he's so powerful, but because he is one of them.
Yep. And I mean, I've wanted the Franklin X Men connection to happen forever. There was a story called The 12 around the turn of the century, which was originally introduced by, I believe, Louise Simonson in probably X Factor 17, 16, way back in the mid
Okay,
to late
wow.
80s. And the idea was that there were going to be 12 mutants that were going to lead us into like the next millennium, the next stage. And oftentimes Franklin was in that mix. And I always thought that was so cool that such a powerful character was A, not an X-Men character, B, was a kid, and I don't know if there's a C or not, but I was looking forward to seeing the interaction. Franklin would he wouldn't join an X team, but he would live with Generation X for a little while during the Heroes Return era, or Heroes Reborn era, I should say.
Okay.
Post Onslaught, all the Marvel heroes are sent to this pocket dimension of Franklin's own creation. Franklin was left behind, so his parents are gone. He's got to stay somewhere. Well, let's put him with Generation X, and we'll give him a mini-series called Daydreamers that really, really sucked. But he was there, and I was looking forward to this from the moment Cyclops said, "Hey, you got a nice looking kid over there. We can't wait to have him on the team." I was looking forward to seeing how this would play out, and unfortunately, it really doesn't.
No, so it's written by Chip Zdarsky, who's a
Mm-hmm.
very quality writer. I was expecting not to like him when he first kind of came over
Same
into
here.
Marvel stuff,
Same
because
here.
I had him in my head filed under, oh, he's the guy who makes the dirty jokes that aren't as funny as he thinks they are.
Yeah, me too.
That
Me
was
too.
he's artist. I think he's the artist on Sex Criminals. He's done some of those things, and he has like a public persona. His name isn't really Chip Zdarsky. I forget what it really is, but he has not just a pen name, but like a pen persona where
Yeah.
he makes himself out to be kind of a weirdo slob. And
Weirdo.
maybe he really is a weirdo slob, but
Mhm.
he has a persona that he uses for this.
Yeah.
And I wasn't super happy about that. But then I read him do, it was Invaders, I think was the first thing I read of his that I
Okay.
really loved.
Mm-hmm.
That was an incredible book that sadly was kind of cut
Short-lived.
short.
Yeah.
And I think he also did the Marvel 2-in-1. That was also Chip Zdarsky.
Yes, it was. He did.
Also
2-in-1.
really good. And again, also working with some Fantastic Four kind of characters.
Yep. Bringing
So
them back.
seeing him coming back to do an X-Men Fantastic Four book, I was pretty excited.
Oh yeah, I thought this was going to be a lot of fun. I also was kind of questioning of Zarsky. I think I read his Jughead back when like Mark Waid came onto
Okay.
Archie,
Yeah.
and
He
I was
was a
like,
Jughead writer.
yeah, I'm
I
like
never read any
this.
of that, but I know he did that.
Yeah, I was like, this is not. And he was also paired up with like the Squirrel Girl artist, and that's not my favorite stuff either.
Erica, I forget what her name is.
Henderson.
Erica Henderson, yes.
Yeah, not my favorite. Not my favorite. She's got the nuts and bolts down. No pun intended with the squirrel.
Works for Squirrel Girl. I don't know if she'd work in anything more serious than that.
Yeah. So it's very, very stylized stuff. But this book comes out, I'm thinking that this is going to be like not so much deep stuff, but something. I thought something was going to happen here. What we got instead was basically the X-Men as like foaming at the mouth villains.
It's a tug of war between the Fantastic Four and the X-Men for control of Franklin. And I think that what's interesting is this was not written out of the X office.
No.
Right?
No.
It didn't have the X
Fantastic Four
editors.
office.
It didn't have it wasn't part of the like look. It didn't have I don't think it had the data pages.
It had a take on them.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
They had data pages, but they were all wrong. At least in
Yeah.
my head, like, oh, this isn't the way these are supposed to look, because in the main books, the data pages have a very particular
got
look
the
and
Tom
feel
Muller
to them.
look. Yeah.
Right. And these didn't have that. So it was kind of half in the boat, half out of the boat.
Yeah.
But I think in a way that worked, because we were seeing the X-Men from an external, excuse the term, perspective.
Sure.
Right? We're kind of seeing how the rest of the world
Would
is
perceive
looking
them.
at this team,
Yeah.
which is a super interesting idea. And one thing I was wondering about during this whole period.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's basically like Professor X and Magneto wake up one day and say, "Hey, let's go get Franklin today." Then they go and like try to snatch him out of his mother's arms. It's like, huh?
Yeah. One of those things in comics, over and over again, all these tensions and fights happen that could be fixed by a simple 2-minute conversation at the beginning. But it never happens because we need to have the fight.
For sure.
And this was a frustrating version of that.
True. And then Doctor Doom gets involved, and we kind of get like a flashback to the original X-Men vs. Fantastic Four miniseries from the 80s, where Kitty and Franklin have a friendship and a camaraderie. I mean, it definitely played off that pretty well. It's just it didn't deliver what I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
And the ramifications were almost an afterthought.
Well, both sides got to be villains here, right? Because the X-Men were trying to steal Franklin.
Yeah.
But then Reed was like putting some sort of a techno whammy on Franklin to kind of make him not able to use the gates?
Yeah, that's how it wrapped up. And this is actually going to be revisited again in, I believe, Marauders, because Kitty met with Reed at the very tail end of Reign of X. But Reed was basically working on a way to erase the mutant gene. And it was like a little machine here. And the ending was pretty cool in that Xavier finds this out. Him and Magneto visit, and they take the ability to remember how to do this from Reed, but not the memory that he did it in the first place.
Yes.
So basically driving Reed crazy. He knows he can do this. He knows he's created this machine, this implant, whatever the hell it is. He just doesn't know how to do it again. So pretty horrendous, terrifying sort of stuff there. But a pretty decent takeaway. And for the past, what are we in 2022 now? For the past 3 years, it hasn't been touched on again. So it's
no, it hasn't.
It hopefully it will be pretty soon with Kate meeting up.
This miniseries tried to settle Franklin's status. And okay, yep, he's a mutant. He'll be able to go back and forth.
Mhm.
He's not ours, but he is kind of part of us, and he has a home here.
Yeah.
And then
This is his weekend home.
yeah, but then outside of anything having to do with X-Men,
In Fantastic Four 26.
over in Fantastic Four,
Yep.
clearly the offices or the writers weren't talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because this was very much like the old internet thing that went around where you have two people writing a story and one's a boy who wants to make everything like guns and fighting. The other one's a girl who wants it all to be romance.
Mhm.
And the first line of every time they go back and forth is just undoing what the last one wrote.
Yep.
But that was all a dream. And so over here in Fantastic Four, they had a whole thing about Franklin, retcon, was never actually a mutant to begin with.
Yep.
He just kind of wanted to be one, I guess because he liked Kitty was part of it, and he wanted to have this specialness to him, although he's powerhouse. How much more special can he be?
Exactly.
But he used his own power to give himself a fake mutant gene.
Something like that. Yeah.
So, and then it didn't really wrestle with the idea of, well, if he has the mutant gene, no matter how he got it, does that mean he's a mutant? No, it doesn't. He's not a real mutant.
Does he have a Cerebro backup?
And no matter how powerful he is now, is Xavier and all the mutants just, he's out. You're no good. You are a fake, a fraud, a phony, and we don't want anything to do with you anymore. No takebacks.
Yeah, and it was like that was basically it. Xavier's like, you're no longer welcome here. Don't even bother to pick your stuff up. you're done.
Yeah,
there'll be a crate outside the box in Manhattan. You can pick it up.
We'll
there.
mail your stuff home.
Yeah,
which completely unceremonious, not tied in, not set up, and it just made you think, yeah, no one. Just like we said, they should have had a conversation before they fought in the book. These editors should have had a conversation before writing.
Yeah.
Any of this stuff, because it felt amateurish,
and it feels like it doesn't add anything. Because like what does it hurt that Franklin's a mutant? Does it?
Yeah, and so I've been reading Fantastic Four right now. There's a Reckoning War storyline going on, which is started off great, getting a little shaky in the middle, but some cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I like the beginning.
Yeah, he had a lot of plates spinning, and I think some of the plates are starting to fall off the sticks.
And he actually gave Rogue more dialogue in like 3 panels than Jerry Duggan's given her in 2 years. So that's good.
So yeah, but I don't know. Again, I don't know why this had to happen. It really seemed like somebody from on high declared this has to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's rights. It shouldn't be any rights issues anymore now that Disney owns everything.
Yeah.
But something behind the scenes went on that we don't know about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, it was a kind of a fun read, but now that we know what happened afterwards, it doesn't feel like it's at all necessary.
It was $16 that we could have spent elsewhere, or $20. I don't remember if they were $4 or $5 each, but whatever the price.
So the next tie-in was X-Men taking part in Empire.
Ugh.
So Empire was another cosmic event that involved the Earth getting invaded by plant monsters, which
wait a minute. An alien invasion in Marvel? What? No.
Yeah. So the only kind of things here that I think were kind of interesting was, hey, we get horticulture back, those crazy old ladies that I like more than Chris does. And also, it set up the idea that Wanda is still kind of thinking about what she did to the mutants.
This is another attempt at rehabbing.
Right. So just coincidentally, she happens to go back to Genosha, and she tries to resurrect all the mutants she killed.
Well, these are the ones that were killed by Cassandra Nova. that
Oh,
they
okay.
started the
Oh,
Morrison
right.
run.
I'm
Yeah,
getting my mutant massacres and
yeah,
falls and
easy to
houses of
do,
M
easy
all
to
mixed
do.
up. Okay. So she's trying to not exactly cancel out what she did, but kind of
Make
atone
good.
for
Yeah.
her crime against the mutants by bringing back these dead mutants.
Hmm.
And she brings them back, but they're all zombies now.
Yeah.
Sometimes dead is
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sets up this very strange, but to me, very funny thing because I played that computer game called Plants vs. Zombies,
Hmm.
where it's a tower defense game where you set up all your plants against waves and waves of zombies. And this was very much making a joke out of, hey, our tie-in is Plants vs. Zombies.
They
And
even called one of the issues that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought that was pretty funny. But and then it all goes wrong, and then Doctor Strange has to step in, and it's a Doctor Strange Wanda interaction, which is very relevant in the cinematic universe these days. But it's very much Wanda screwed up, and Doctor Strange has to help her fix it.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the upshot is we got to meet who was that one crazy character?
Splody Boy.
Splody Boy. Yes. Again, a character I was more amused by than Chris was.
Hmm.
But the only thing to take out of this is, oh yeah, Wanda's still around and she's interested in atoning for what she did.
Hmm.
That's it.
Yep. Wanda Rehab Take 45.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another tie-in here, which is kind of tenuous, and I really only included it in X-Lapse because it was part of like the coming soon page at the very tail end of the issue.
Yeah, it was on that list where they tell you, oh, here's the next issue coming
Yep.
out for. It's like the next month worth of books usually.
Yes, basically, yes. And they only did it with the first issue of this book. But
Right, which seems like it was probably a mistake
I'm
because
thinking so.
again, it's not part of the editorial staff, the X
I think it
desk.
was. I think
Was
it
it?
was part of the X desk. I believe
Okay.
it was. I believe it was Jordan White. But this was the Juggernaut miniseries. They
Ah.
call it Juggernaut Volume 3, even though it. I mean, Juggernaut Volume 2 is a one shot. I think Juggernaut Volume 1 is also a one shot. They call it Volume 3. We'll call it Volume 3 for easy numbers here.
Easy Googling.
Yeah. So this was a pretty fun series. I wasn't expecting to like it. It is Fabian Nicieza. I think it was Ron Garney who is he the one doing Berserker now with
Oh, I don't
Keanu?
know.
I
I'm not
think
sure.
I think he did Berserker, but on Juggernaut he did some fantastic work here. It was a light series compared to so much of the headier X stuff we were getting at the time. It was kind of like a day off every time I covered an issue with Juggernaut because I didn't have to think, I didn't have to look for symbolism, I didn't have to chew on the
Right.
scenery. It was just like, oh, this is just a fun kind
It
of
felt
story
like
here.
a much older fashioned feeling kind of a book.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Not
Definitely.
part of the grand plan of Hickman and what he's trying to pull all the strings to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It's just Juggernaut. He's not allowed to be on the island because he's Chuck's brother, but he's not a mutant, even though everyone thinks he's a mutant.
Yep.
And he's kind of off doing his own thing. And he runs into this
D-Cell.
girl who is a mutant, right?
Yes.
D-Cell, who's like this kind of character, kind of living on her own. I don't know if she got kicked out of her house or what, but she's
Street
like
kid.
doing her own thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
street kid.
And she has powers to decelerate. So, like, the Juggernaut will charge at her, and she can actually decelerate him. Can't stop him because he's a Juggernaut, but can slow him down suitably enough here.
Mhm.
But it was kind of fun, and I liked that we got so much of Juggernaut and Charles, and Juggernaut and his old pal Black Tom Cassidy. And it was fun how, Juggernaut was like the one guy, for whatever reason, that they wouldn't let on Krakoa. It was just like they let like refugees on there. They let bad people on there when they wanted to punish him. Juggernaut, no. He's helping out, but no, you're not allowed here. And I thought that was really well done until they forgot about it. I think Ben Percy forgot about it and then included Juggernaut in an info page, having a drink at the Green Lagoon.
Oops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, again, so this was a fun book. I like the way it does point out that yes, Krakoa exists in the wider Marvel universe, which is nice, and it seems like it is connected to nothing. But it's kind of funny. But Juggernaut is very recently now back.
Yep.
On Krakoa.
Legion,
he's on Krakoa. He's part of Legion of X, Nightcrawler's new team.
Yeah.
So they kind of talk a little bit about how he's allowed back now, but it's still a little bit vague. But he seems quite happy to be back on Krakoa. So if you want to see the story of how Juggernaut wanted to be on Krakoa, but originally wasn't allowed, this little miniseries is where you go for that.
Yeah, and they did a follow up in X Men Unlimited on Marvel Unlimited. It was a Juggernaut and Deadpool team up story, which it was basically a follow up to this.
Oh,
Where
right,
at the end of
yes.
it, he was invited to stay on Krakoa, but he said no.
That's the one where they make a big deal about showing Deadpool just getting stomped on over and over again as you scroll down the page, right? Was that
Several
story?
times,
Several
several times. Yeah,
times.
this is I think Niciesa caught whatever it is that Duggan caught, where it's just it can't be funny anymore. What's going on here?
Oh, well.
But the last part of our like 1.5 wave here is a series of one shots. The Giant Size X Men one shots.
That's a big name. If you call something Giant Size X-Men, that sounds like it should be important.
Yeah, it does evoke a certain image, but this was kind of a mixed bag. It feels like they started out with one linear story they wanted to tell throughout these giant sizes, and then they forgot about that story until like the very end. It was a Storm story, which stands to reason that they'd forget about it. It seems like Storm was forgotten about quite often during this run, but yeah, Storm was somehow infected by the Children of the Vault. Somehow the Children of the Vault got out, even though they were in the vault, and
Yeah, it was, and somehow the thing that's killing her can really kill her, even though death doesn't matter. But in
yeah,
this miniseries, it does. And really, this was, if you want to read this, it's for the art. These were,
these
I
were
think it
artist
was
showcases.
created to bring in some amazing artists, give them some bigger space. I think the format was larger too, was it? Were these large format issues?
No, no, no. Well, I
No?
mean,
Okay.
they were more pages.
Okay, but regular
Yeah,
sized.
yeah, regular
Okay.
size for sure. Maybe the I don't know if maybe a trade collection might have been oversized. That's a
I'm probably making that
possibility.
up. I'm a digital reader. It can be whatever size my tablet is. I can zoom in.
But it
So
was
yeah, they're cool to look at, but the story is never really referred to again, except for one little thing. We
yeah,
see that Magneto gets access and buys this island in
Mykonos.
this in this miniseries, and that's where the Hellfire Gala ends up being later.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
Look
I
at it for
mean,
some pretty pictures, but that's the only reason to look at this.
yeah. I mean, they redid or they did an homage to the Nuff Said story that Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley did back in New X Men, the Silence Psychic Rescue in Progress or whatever. Back then, it was Emma and Jean doing it to Professor X. Now it was Emma and Jean doing it to Storm, and it was very, very similar. A lot of callbacks to that. There was a Phantom X story. Phantom X is one of those characters I never really thought was near as cool as I think everyone else did. He's kind of like
Yeah,
just French Gambit.
I remember enjoying that story, and it felt like, oh, this is an interesting character I should know more about. But then when I started googling him, it gets really complicated really quickly, and
It does.
I didn't go into him any further.
No, no, it's a very, very Morrison character. One of those Morrison characters that no one else should have ever touched. Just leave it as it is. I'm trying to think what other. We had a giant sized Nightcrawler. That Nightcrawler was not even a focus character in.
That's right.
Um,
That was so weird that they called it that.
yeah, it was. It had wonderful Alan Davis art, and it actually took us back to the old Xavier Mansion, which we haven't seen in ages. What is the other one here? We had Giant Size Storm, of course. Phantom X, Magneto. Yeah, they were what they were.
Hmm.
They weren't
Yeah.
much more than that.
If one of those artists is somebody you're a fan of, you'll definitely want the book.
Yeah, I mean, if you like the covers to Marauders, the Russell Dodderman stuff, he actually gets an entire issue here, and that's not something we see very often. I think he did like War of the Realms or whatever that was back in 2019 or so. But it's some pretty art, pretty art. Phil Noto does the Phantom X one, I believe. It's very, very good stuff. But that is basically wave 1.5, if we call it that. Then we get our second official wave here. These are books that were meant to be ongoings, and actually, I think one of them is still ongoing.
Right. To the extent that anything actually is an ongoing, that's not called Batman or Detective Comics.
Certainly.
These are those.
Yes.
So
And
yeah, the first one is going to be Wolverine because of course
mhm.
Wolverine, again, one of the top two probably characters at Marvel of all time. Super popular. People
Mhm.
don't know anything about comics, know from Wolverine.
Sure.
So naturally, if we've got a bunch of X books going on, there's got to be one called Wolverine.
Absolutely. And this is volume 7. Volume 7. Oy. Wolverine here. And I mean, they even joked about it in the preview magazine that led up to the Hoxpox deal, the Seeds of Tomorrow. Hickman's like, hey, you never know. Maybe we'll do a Wolverine book too. And it's like, well, yes, of course you will. And this is another Ben Percy book. And oftentimes it's kind of, I don't want to necessarily call it a sister book to X Force because I think sometimes Percy forgets which book he's writing.
I know I forget which book I'm reading.
This is true. This is true. Sometimes it's like, is this X Force? Is this Wolverine? Does it matter? No. We got a lot of Russian bad guys here. We also got vampire.
Yeah, so the Russian bad guys are in both books.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We get, I think only for Wolverine, we get the vampire section. That's just a Wolverine thing.
That drips into X Force a little bit with Omega Red.
Gosh.
Just with Omega Red.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Sure. And we meet this guy named Jeff Bannister, who's kind of this Lebowski-esque kind of character.
Dude, yeah.
Right. So, but he works for the CIA, right?
I believe it's the CIA or just a CIA analog.
Sure. And he has a sick daughter.
Yes.
And he kind of makes friends with, or like grudging respect / friendship, if Wolverine can make friends with Wolverine. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like another connection between Wolverine and the wider world.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is another one of those cases where we talk about, communication between desks here. And I'm pretty sure they outright say that Jeff Bannister's daughter has cancer and that cancer is cured by the Krakoan magic meds. But later on, we're going to find out that it doesn't cure cancer, but it did in this case. I don't know if it's case-by-case basis or just something we're not supposed to think too hard about.
Right. Is it a mistake or is it just the world's complicated?
Tough there you go. There you go. Both, neither, who knows?
And yeah, these stories, it seems to be kind of its own thing, right? There's the Russian thing that weaves through everything else.
Yeah.
The vampire thing. Does that tie in a little bit with the whole Dracula in Russia? Yeah, I guess that's because he's weaving through a lot of Marvel books right now.
Yeah, he's a Chernobyl or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think we know what he does come up in the crossover. He has, I think, just the one Wolverine book in the crossover. But he is going to be part of Judgment Day, naturally enough.
Of course. And let's see here. What else do we had some fun Maverick stories here, but those don't come until after X Attends. One of my go-to lines from this book, Wolverine is like riding on a sled with like a refrigerated vampire behind him, and he's chasing down these like vampire kids, and he yells out, it's a full page spread, and he yells out, "Ride or die." Huh?
Which again, it's one of those things that Ben Percy or somebody, probably Ben Percy, decided, what would be really cool, have him on saying "ride or die," and he doesn't manage to make it work in the book.
Yeah. Okay. But I still love it, and it's something I try to add to my vernacular as often as possible here. Just in the weird, I'll be, I'll just be sitting on the exercise bike, and I'll yell.
Yeah. So some fun adventure, some fun action, but it doesn't really get deep conceptually the way some of the other books do.
No, and it doesn't really need to. It's a book that I always look forward to reading, but I always dread talking about. Because, if you have content you're putting out on the internet, it's like you want to have something to say about it. When I finish an issue of Wolverine, it's like, well, that was an issue of Wolverine.
Those are some things Wolverine just did.
Yeah, and it's like, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It happened.
Right. It's not thought-provoking, and that's okay. He's Wolverine. He's the best that he is at what he does, and what he does isn't philosophy novels.
It's true. Conversely, we have Cable. We do have Cable. And I think this is one that we all collectively rolled our eyes at when it was first announced. It's like,
again, because I don't know too much about Cable, but when I picture Cable, I picture big dumb guns and a big dumb 90s book and probably some jokes about pouches and some crazy time travel stuff that doesn't actually make sense, and then he shoots you. That's Cable.
Or you can think about him eating a bagel, which is something that I wrote at length about not too long ago. Cable eats a bagel. The Joe Casey run, which humanized the 90s character, de-imagified him, made him very, very interesting for the first time ever.
I'm jealous. It's hard to get good bagels up here. Do you have good bagels in Arizona?
Hell no.
Oh, man.
Hell no.
I'm going to be jonesing for a bagel all day now.
When I went back to, I was in the city, back in New York in 2019, and I ordered a bagel. I ordered 2 bagels, and I said, my standing bagel order is not toasted poppy bagel with butter. They toasted the damn thing, but I waited online 45 minutes for it. I'm like, screw it. I guess I'm eating this toasted damn bagel. But I do miss bagels very, very much. And my no carb diet is not doesn't facilitate me eating them very often.
Big old carb with a hole in the middle.
That's about the size of it. But
I miss it so much. Okay, but Cable, this isn't At least at first, it's not the great big guy with the great
Nope.
big guns.
It's Kid
This
Cable.
is some kid, and I
Hmm.
didn't really know who or why he looked like that, but
Okay, now
I
Kid
learned all
Cable.
about it on this other podcast
Yeah.
called Chris and Reggie's Cosmic Treadmill because it wasn't actually technically part of X Lapsed. You
It was
went back and revisited. What was the story?
Extermination. I called it Ex-Lapstination.
Okay, yes.
Yes. Now this
So
was
you
a
can learn all
yeah,
about why old Cable turned into young Cable back in those
exactly.
podcasts.
Yeah, it had to do with the original five, the de-aged original five. It was a weird, weird story. But here we are with Kid Cable, and I only knew him from Fallen Angels, which we talked about a few moments ago. And I thought, like, oh, this is gonna suck. This is not going to be good. It's gonna be some smart ass kid. I didn't yet know if this was the old man de-aged, the old man from a different universe, the
Hmm.
old man at a
Hmm.
younger age. I didn't know much about what this was.
It's the X-Men, it's Cable. There's
It
all
could
sorts
be
of
any, yeah.
crazy ways to make that happen. Could be a
Could be
clone,
Strife.
could
Could
be a
be yeah.
robot, could be a life model decoy.
Hmm.
Who the hell knows?
It's true. And thankfully, this was written before Duggan forgot how to be funny because we got a funny story here. We got a funny, a sweet, a
Yeah,
heartfelt
it's
story.
touching.
Yeah, it's very, very hard.
And also it looks amazing.
Oh, Phil Noto.
The
Oof,
Phil Noto
oof,
art in
oof,
this
oof.
is just it's this
Candy.
painterly watercolor-ish,
Oh, it's
but
candy.
it has its own look to it that's unlike anything else in the X-Men line.
Hmm.
And I think there was one time where I was confused by is somebody supposed to look like that or not? But other than that, the art was A++.
Yeah, there was a point in time where we like met all these variations of Strife at different ages where it's like it didn't really stick the landing. It's like, is this old Strife? Is this
Right.
young Strife?
Am I supposed to think he looks exactly like that other
Yeah, are we supposed to
character?
recognize this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to recognize it, or is it
Yeah.
just that's how these faces are being drawn? Like
Yeah.
Jack Kirby, his characters look alike. Not because they're related. That's just how Jack Kirby draws
Yeah,
faces.
male, female, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
he has one male face, one female face.
But it was just a wonderful, wonderful series, and you can talk about like what does it mean for a story to have heart, and it's not a question you can answer really with words, but
Mhm.
when you read it, you know. And Cable was one of those books. Here it was a kid trying to live up to his own expectations, basically, because
Yes.
if you hadn't read Extermination, you'd know that you wouldn't know that Kid Cable came back to get rid of old Cable because he went soft. He kind of fell off what his original mission statement was. He became lax in his time, copping, basically.
Hmm.
And he didn't want to become that guy. He didn't want to become the soft guy with connections to people that he might not need or shouldn't have connections to. And it was all about that, him trying to find his way. And then we mentioned earlier that he was dating one of the cuckoos, and that was very complicated. Emma and Cyclops got
Hmm.
involved as like the surrogate parent and the actual parent. It was
Yeah,
very
we get to see
well done.
that interaction with the Summerses, and
Hmm.
how they kind of get their kid back at a funny age, and how
Yep.
they deal with that is interesting.
And it's the
He,
first time that Cyclops gets to actually raise an adolescent. And
yes,
when
he
Kid
actually has a
Cable
kid who's younger than him, which is
exactly
unusual.
for the first, yeah. And when Kid Cable realizes that he's done about all he can here, and the world needs the old man back, that runs sideways to the way Cyclops is going to react to that. It's like, I have my kid back, and you're going to leave now, and you're going to bring back the old man. It got very, very deep. It
Yeah,
was just really good.
I was disappointed to find out we were losing young Cable because I was enjoying
Hmm.
having him around, and I mean
Yeah.
it tells the story well why he has to come back, but I still miss the kid.
Yeah, and just the way it was written like on two different planes here. We'd get like these bits and pieces of Old Man Cable in like a wasteland, and you try to figure it's like, is this like Krakoa 500 years from now? Is this on Earth? Where are we? Are we on Mars? I mean, it might be it might be on Mars for all we know now. It was just very, very well done, and it kept you asking questions. It kind of got taken off target by Exoswords. It kind of got taken off task by Sword, the series, which we'll get to another
Yeah, I
time.
think the X of Swords came in pretty early in the Cable run, right?
Like fourth or fifth issue in.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it really interrupted the forward progression that we're trying to set up.
And Exoswords actually did. It was like a good thing and a bad thing for the series because first it took Cable off task, which is a bad thing. It made him forget about his main story. It made him go search for a damn satellite for an issue with his parents. But then the next issue, he's bested in battle, and that's where the seeds of doubt start to grow. And like, am I good enough to be here? Do I need to be here now? Am I the right Cable for this point in time? So you take the good, you take the bad, and I mean, it was a really really
Mhm.
solid book. If anybody
Again,
hasn't read it, definitely do
it's
it.
not. I don't know how relevant it is going forward because again, all you need to know is, yep, we get the old man back, and he's kind of dealing with now being he was gone, but he's back. He was young, now he's old.
Mhm.
So, but just as its own story, it's a really good one.
Oh yeah. So if you were like avoiding a Cable series because ew Cable, give it a go. Give it a go. It's good stuff. Another book that I would always say, definitely check this book out if you haven't already. Even if you have, read it again because it's that damn good. This is Hellions.
It's crazy how good this book turned out. Not only just good, but
Ridiculous.
how relevant it was, how it talked about important things in the Krakoan world that other books weren't talking about, and how
Hmm.
it set up important events, how it took characters who we didn't like so much when they showed up in the miniseries. His name just popped out of my head because I don't like it so much. Fallen Angels.
Fallen Angels.
It redeemed that. Yeah, and it was one of those where there's this kind of when it started coming out, this kind of bubbling talk on the internet among people who usually love to crap all over anything Marvel does, especially the X books, and say,
Yeah.
"Wow, this book is actually really good. You should read this book." No, like not
Hmm.
ironically, you should actually read this
Yeah.
book.
No, no, it's a wonderful, and it's a book that I wanted to hate right off the bat because it was a weird arrangement of characters, which is one of my pet peeves in comics, where it's like, hey, who can make the wackiest team? It's like, can we just have a team? This seemed like one of those wacky for the sake of it, LOL random sort of teams. So I wanted to hate it for that. I also wanted to hate it because it was Zeb Wells, who is someone I'm very, very jealous of for all of his success. So I don't
That
want to
was
see
not a
it.
writer I knew anything about, so all I saw was, oh, here's a name that's kind of
Mhm.
Zeb. That's a fun name. I'll remember that.
Yeah, I remember reading old Wizard magazines where he would like send in like videos and stuff, and he'd win contests there. And it's like, I hate this guy. Who does he think he is being talented when I'm
Mhm.
not? And
Yeah,
I,
and he's moved on now to the Amazing Spider-Man book.
mhm.
So he's only 2 issues into that.
Yep,
The first issue was very, very it was super dark and let's so all the horrible things happening to Peter, which
yeah,
I wasn't so crazy about. The second issue really felt more Zeb Wellsy, and it really feels like he has the voice of Peter Parker. So
yeah,
I was happy to see that because
yeah.
he Hellions really earned him, I think, a prominent place writing comics for Marvel.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And he's not a stranger to Spidey either. He did Peter Parker Spider Man back around the turn of the century as well, and that was another fun run of the character. But Hellions, man, wanted to hate it, and
Mhm.
it didn't take long. It
So
took.
this is another team book.
Yep.
It's another team book with an old name kind of twisted and repurposed.
Hmm.
But this team is put together by one of the, again, surprise hit characters of the whole era, Mr. Sinister.
Yep. Yep. And these are the problematic characters. These are the characters that are inconvenient. They're not quite evil. They're not, they're not fully good guys. They're just they're the people with
Yeah,
troubles. They
yeah,
have
they're
challenges.
the bulls in the china shop that is
Yeah.
Krakoa.
Basically. So yeah, this team is put together as a way to give them like to therapeutically deal with their like berserker impulses and stuff. Like it's taking the bull in the china shop and pointing them at that wall you want removed. It's like, hey, while you're here, you might as well do something. It'll help you blow off some steam, and it'll also help us out. So they're put together for this, and their first task is to go to the old home for foundlings in
Yeah, it's
Nebraska.
it's kind of funny how Mr. Sinister, we see him scheming that he has
Yep.
the arguments he makes in public to the Quiet Council are
Hmm.
all about, giving these, everyone deserves a chance and redemption, and it'll be good for them, it'll be good for Krakoa. But of course, we know it's Mr. Sinister. He has 8 plans deep what he
Oh yeah.
really wants to do.
Absolutely. Everything's a means to an end, including this team of Hellions here. And Havoc was probably our main character for this book, at least from from the view, looking in from outside, it's like, okay, we can recognize Havoc
He's the
as a
biggest name.
tenured,
He's a
as
Summers
tenured
brother.
character.
This is going to be
Yeah,
big.
for sure. And he's been kind of through the ringer for a little while now. We can go back to Axis, which sucked. You remember you were around for the Axis story.
I've heard of it, but I've not read it. I know he was part of the War of Kings, something of Kings.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh no, I'm thinking of Vulcan.
That's Vulcan.
Wrong Summers
That's
brother.
Vulcan.
Wrong Summers
Yeah.
brother.
Easy to mix them up. But he was part of the Axis crossover. He was one of the leaders of the Uncanny Avengers back when they were doing the Unity Squad following AVX. There was another story, Avengers, X-Men, Axis, where constitutions were swapped, basically. Good guys became bad guys became good. Havoc became bad. Sabretooth became good. Hobgoblin became good. It sucked. It wasn't great. It was
High concept.
It was a Rick Remender story, which was a very rare miss from him, because I liked so much of what he's done besides that.
Mm-hmm.
But Havoc has had these lingering sort of weirdness to him, where
right, he's kind of like causing. He kind of, I think the way it leads off is he kind of pops off and causes some violence in a way he's not really in control of.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can't explain afterwards why
he did it or how it happened. Yeah.
Right. And I was thinking this was I thought we're going to find out at the end that this was something that was set up by Mr. Sinister to cause this problem.
Yeah.
And I mean, it still might turn out to be that, but that has not proved fruitful so far.
No.
It
seems to have gone a different direction.
Another one of my theories that didn't actually come true. So the other characters on here, we have a character with the lovely and not very modern name Scalp Hunter.
Yes.
So he has, Grey Crow. And one thing that happened in this book is I think we actually defined his mutant powers more than had ever been defined before. Where he's the one who can make the guns appear, right? He actually makes guns out of himself.
Like he can weaponize himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like DC's gunfire.
It's almost like he beams in pieces of guns from some alternate plane.
It's like Forge, but with like artillery. Forge with armory, and not just gimmicks.
Right. And so he was also part of what is this? He was part of the Mutant Massacre?
He was part of the original Marauders.
Okay.
Yeah, he was part of the original Marauders here. And Hellions, for folks who don't know, that was Emma Frost's team of young characters. They ran a contest to New Mutants.
Right. When she had her own little academy that was kind of the rival to Professor Xavier's.
Yeah, and that's where Generation X would start up in Massachusetts. So,
and there was a thing where Kitty might go to one or the other. Is that right?
There was a bit of a contest between Xavier and Emma, also with Firestar, where Firestar ultimately went with the Hellions, and there was a whole bunch of very, very awful things that Emma Frost did to her.
But this team, I think they really it's a cool name. They wanted to use a cool name, so there's some characters that some rough edges to them. Call them the Hellions.
There is a bit of a fetish for that in the Hickman run here. I mean, Inferno. We don't need something called Inferno.
Marauders,
Trial of Magneto. We don't need this redone, but
we do have this character Empath on the team, and he was one of the original Hellions. So his deal is that he can affect emotions.
Yep.
Like even not just emotions, but like attitudes, almost like personality shifts.
Tones, yeah.
So he not only can do this, he almost can't stop doing it.
He can't not
do it. Imagine that your whole life, if you wanted someone to like you or do something for you, you just had to want it enough, and your power would make them do that.
For sure.
What would happen to your personality? You'd be a piece of crap. You would be a horrible human being. How could you not? This book actually makes you think, feel bad for Empath, which is a funny thing to say.
For Empath,
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another character on here is Wild Child, who is this feral animal man kind of a thing. He's not quite a Sabretooth Wolverine analog, but he's in that, bestial pack mentality, tear people up kind of mode.
Yeah.
And again,
Alpha Flight character.
Yeah, he's not someone you'd want coming to your dinner party. Very rough edges, but yeah. So he has to kind of learn how to get along with other people. We also have Orphan Maker and Nanny, who are
Yep.
two of the strangest characters I've
Very
ever
odd.
run across.
Very, very
So,
odd.
Orphan Maker is this super powerful man child,
Hmm.
big and strong, good with guns. He's wearing this armor that we get hints about. This armor is like protecting him from ending the world, maybe.
We don't know
He
what his
has
powers
we
are.
don't know what it
Yeah.
is, but we know he's got a lot of them and they're real
Yeah.
big and they're real dangerous, which makes you wonder why you bring him back. But which Krakoa, everyone gets a
Just for
second
all mutants.
chance.
Yeah.
And looking over this crazy powerful guy is Nanny, who is again a character always in this armor, but her armor
Mhm.
armor is a big old egg
Yep.
with giant like robot eyes on the front and little stubby arms and legs. And
Mhm.
she is his nanny. He
Yep.
listens to her, he whines to her, she protects him, but also scolds him. And it's this weird, uncomfortable dynamic between them.
Very creepy relationship, and I love how Mr. Sinister is always freaked out by Nanny. Every time he sees her, he's like, "Ah!" Oh, it's just that's
He's surprised every time. Yeah, it's
Steven
like you don't get used
Segovia.
to it.
Yeah, Steven Segovia is on the art here, and oh man, the facials this man can deliver, ridiculous. It's
Mhm.
amazing, amazing.
Yes, the acting, it really reminds me of like the old JLI issues
Oh yeah,
where
very Kevin
it's
Maguire. Yeah.
Very Kevin McGuire. It's not a comedy book, but it has actual funny parts in the adventure story.
Oh, that yeah, it's comic timing is something that's hard to get like in motion, much less on a static page, and
Right.
you get it in spades and Hellions. I
Yep,
mean,
and
just
that's credit to both, art and story. They work so well
Segovia
together. So
killed
we've
it.
got all these, rough around the edges characters who need some training, need to get their confidence, need to,
Hmm.
learn how to get along in this world.
Yep, how
And so
to
you got to put somebody responsible with them. You can't just have only problem children. You need, Nanny's a nanny, but she's got her own issues.
she's got a leader.
You
Yeah.
need someone a little more normal. And who is more well adjusted than our old friend Psylocke?
Yes, this is of course Quanon, the one we just talked about in Fallen Angels. Here, she is. Was she one of the captains of Krakoa at this point, or was that not until later?
I don't think not yet. No,
Because I think that was after. I think that was when Cyclops left to start his
I believe
team.
so.
But yeah, she is. She's in charge of them, and she is broken herself. And we mentioned that she is in, emotional hock to Sinister. So Mr. Sinister is kind of like the CEO of the Hellions, I suppose. He's not, not he's not the middle manager. He's like the big wig. He's the one who represents them at the Quiet Council, and
Right.
working for
He's
him.
the one who will get yelled at by the other Quiet Council members if and
And
when
that's
these people screw up.
yeah, and then stuff rolls downhill. And Psylocke is basically the middle manager there. She's the field leader. She's keeping everybody on task here, and it's really like a situation of I don't want to say blind leading the blind, but like the broken leading the broken here, because she is just as damaged, if not more so, than these other characters here. And the dynamic that they're able to pull off here, you I don't know how you could plan to write a book this good. This book almost feels like it's so good by accident because it is just so damn good.
Right. This was clearly not part of the original Hickman pitch. Oh, by
I
the
doubt
way,
it. Yeah,
we're going to have this crazy team over
this
here.
awesome book.
No,
Yeah.
it could maybe it was. I can't imagine it was because it feels like it's so random, but
Mhm.
it has the freedom to do things the other books either don't have the freedom to do or don't feel like they have the freedom to do.
Sure, sure. Yeah, because it is a very fringe book. Of course, it is part of it's part of the same crew, it's part of the same books, it's part of the same editorial fiefdom, but it is an outlier. It's a fringe book. It's able to do the weird stuff. And one of the weird things it does is, well, like we said, it goes to the Foundlings' home in Nebraska, where it runs into the original or the legacy Marauders, and that's where we meet our old friend Madeline Pryor, who, if you're a long tenured X fan, you see Madeline Pryor, you might have the reaction of, "Oh wow, it's Maddie," or you might go, "Oh God, it's Maddie."
The Goblin Queen.
The Goblin Queen. If you survived things like Inferno, the original one, the real one, if you survived things like X Man, you remember? You know anything about X Man?
I can't say that I do. No.
Okay, well, X Man, he came out of the Age of Apocalypse. He's an alternate reality version of Cable.
Okay.
So So the son of
Oh, he was
Cyclops.
he was part of the thing that happened right before the Krakoa reboot.
That was Age of X-Men, yeah.
Okay.
But back in the 90s here, he came to Earth as part of the package post AOA, and it was immediately found by Madeline Pryor, who is basically his mother, and they fell in love, and it was a very weird
Yikes.
story.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, Madeline Pryor is a clone of Jean Grey.
Created by Sinister,
Cyclops was married to her for a while
while Jean was dead.
while Jean was dead.
They had a kid.
And again, it's one of those things where there was she's been the victim outside of the book of like several retcons where she got the short end of the stick, I think is what happened
Yes.
to her.
Yeah.
So yeah, so she is like basically, we got an evil version of every character. She's the evil version of Jean Grey.
Mm-hmm.
Is her
Quick and dirty, yeah.
Her one sentence description.
Yeah.
So she has a long history in these books, and she's done lots of things on her own as Madeline Pryor, but she's also just kind of a version of Jean Grey.
Mm-hmm.
So in this world where people die and come back, but you can only have one version of each at a time, is she her own thing, or is she just, a
copy.
bad clone version of Jean Grey, and that, when she dies, does she come back, or do we just say, no, we already have one of those?
Yeah.
We used to have two of them. Now we only have one. We only want
We're
the
okay
one.
with
So
that.
this is good. We actually want you to die, is what we're saying here. And yes, she's not too keen on that. She thinks she's real.
Yep.
She wants to continue to be real, even though she was made by Mr. Sinister. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So he's sent his team here to kind of clean up some of his old messes.
Yeah.
Because this is his old clone farm. He's got, I forget what the other monstrosities are at this location.
It's the other Legacy Marauders.
Okay.
Yeah, like Arclight and I can't remember all their names, but yeah, they're all there. Vertigo. Yeah, and they are being corralled by Maddie Pryor, and the Hellions do clean up the mess.
Right. It's not really clean at the end. They clean up this mess, but they make one giant mess of their own. They just blow the whole damn thing up, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And again, we see a little bit of interaction between the human police force and the mutants, and who's in charge of what. And this is a mutant thing, so we're going to go in.
Yeah.
But you're not on Krakoa, so you better be, better play by the rules and whose rules are in charge. But yeah, so they end up. Havoc just kind of goes nuts at the end, right?
Yeah,
and blows everybody up.
Yeah, and Havoc was he was romantically entangled with Madeline post her marriage and dissolution of her marriage with Cyclops. Maddie was part of the Outback team when the X-Men faked their own death and disappeared to the Outback for an extended period of time. Mm-hmm. Maddie was with them, and at the end of that I believe that was the Fall of the Mutants. Cyclops is like walking past like an electronics store, like back in the 80s, electronics stores had all those TVs in the window, right? And they would always, in fiction, they're always showing something important.
Right. The Expository News Network is on.
They are
on. You exactly what you need to know right now. Or the other thing is there's cameras in there and shining out, and you see yourself in all the monitors, and that's symbolic for whatever has to happen at that moment.
There you go. So Cyclops is walking past one of these very convenient stores and finds out that the X-Men were killed in Dallas, and Madeline Pryor was with them. So he thinks, well, he might be thinking, hey, my problem's solved. She's gone. But in reality, he's like, oh, no, they're all dead. In reality, they went to the Outback. She started a romantic entanglement with Havoc, and looks like, despite the fact that Havoc's been, entangled with several other people in the interim, Polaris, I think he was briefly married to the Wasp and had a kid. Even it's very, very
boy,
weird. Yeah, I think
comics are weird, man.
Yeah, that was around Uncanny Avengers, I believe, probably around Axis. So he's had several romantic entanglements, but I guess he just never got over his brother's girlfriend. So here we have, the last stand here. Havoc is faced off with Maddie. She's dying, and she asks him to, basically just remember that she was a real girl, because she's very much. I mean, how do you even define that? Is she a real girl? Is she not? I mean, it really depends on the.
Yeah, it raises all these questions about identity and personhood.
Yeah,
that the Krakoa era wants to say, oh, we fixed it all. We understand everything. This is what a person is. And if one dies, we can bring that same person back. but this asks those crazy questions about, but this person over
What if?
here doesn't fit into that scheme. This,
Yep.
was like a particle that doesn't fit into the standard model. It raises some questions about the
Yep.
fundamental understanding of what's really happening here. And the
Yep.
other books often want to just brush that
Glaze over
aside,
it. Yeah.
but Hellions puts the spotlight on it and says, "Here, this is a
Think
thing.
about
This
it.
is important."
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we mentioned either last week or the week before that we mentioned empath. He is kind of like the poor man's Quentin Quire as it pertains to dying in this book. He dies often in this
Indeed,
book. Not quite as often as Quentin, because who
nobody
could?
does. He's the
Yeah,
he's
who
the
could?
king.
He is the king of death. So empath dies a few times, and it's left to the very innocent and naive orphan maker to ask those questions like, how do I treat this person? Is this like I'm talking to empath? Is this like I'm talking to someone brand new? And Scalp Hunter or Grey Crow screws with him a bit, and he's like, "Well, yeah, you do whatever whatever you want. Maybe he's the same guy, maybe it's a different guy, whatever." Kind of tweaks the twists the knife a little bit, but just asking those questions that I think so many of us were waiting to have asked,
Hmm.
and
And
doing it
and
in
who
such a
who asks
way,
them? This weirdo little kid,
a
kind of
naive
joke
kid.
character.
Yeah, yeah, that's out of the mouth of babes, right?
Right. He doesn't know what he's not supposed to say out loud. The other characters
Exactly.
kind of know, well, it would be uncomfortable to say this thing. I'm not going to ask the uncomfortable question.
Hmm.
I'm not going to ask why that lady looks like that or is using
Yeah.
that medical equipment. I know not to say that is rude, but he just says what he's thinking.
Hmm. Yeah, because if someone with sense asks it, they're either going to get an answer they don't want, or they know they're going to be lied to.
Right.
So the kid doesn't quite have those qualms. But I mean, we could talk about Hellions a lot more, and we will as we
Hmm.
work our way through. But
It is the best part of the X of Swords event, by
oh hell yeah!
definitely. And
Oh
again, it's
Lord!
kind of off on the side.
Yep.
But it does a really good job of being part of the event, but also continuing its own story, which is a
Oh,
tough
it's
thing to do
amazing.
for events.
Oh, it's
So we'll
fantastic.
talk about that when we talk about the event itself, I
For
think.
sure, for sure. But we have one last book to discuss out of Wave 2 here, and kind of a I started this book hating it, and then I kind of
Mhm.
fell in love with it toward the end. But
We're
this
we're
is
gonna
X Factor
we're gonna
Volume 4.
disagree on this book
Okay.
probably more than most because
Okay.
I started off hating it and I just hated it more every time because it's written by Leah Williams,
Uh-huh.
who has her own distinct writerly voice,
Hmm.
and it's a voice that makes me want to put the book down and stop reading because
It's
it's a
very
sense of
Twittery.
humor thing. And like if someone's reading an adventure story and it doesn't quite vibe with your sense of adventure
Mm,
story, it can still be kind of okay. But
yeah.
I think if someone has a sense of humor that you just don't like,
Okay.
it's never going to be. It's hard to read through for the other good qualities of the book when this sense of humor you don't like just keeps reaching up, at least for me, slapping me in the face, saying, "Here's a dumb thing she said, just like the
Hmm.
last dumb thing she said, and the next page is going to have another dumb thing that sounds just like this,"
Yeah.
and that makes me want to run screaming.
We were in a bookstore not too long ago, looking at books clearly, and there
As
was a
one does.
kid, yeah, as one might do there, and there was a young person, maybe early 20s, around in the aisle, like around the bend, and they kept saying, "I can't even,"
Ooh.
over and over again. "I can't even. I can't even. I can't even." That kind of it's like very very net speaky, like I could type "I can't even," you know. That's how
you
a
could
lot
you
of
could put that up with any reaction GIF, and people would it would work, right?
yeah,
It's just
yes. So
generic.
that's
Here's the thing.
when I started reading X Factor, that's kind of how the Leia Williams dialogue hit me, as someone just repeating the like same quaint sort of like current year social media speak,
Hmm.
Twitter 256 characters sort of crap.
Yeah,
Like
it
someone just
feels
saying, "I can't even. I
yeah,
can't
it
even."
feels like she's performing for a very particular in group that I am very much
Not a
not a
part of.
part of. Yes, I'm
Yes.
very much specifically their out group,
There you
and
go.
it keeps
There you
reminding me of that. So, but this book,
go.
for all its kind of stylistic stuff that I didn't care for, it
Mhm.
has more than a lot of these books has a very
Purpose.
specific purpose for
Mhm.
existing in the Krakoan universe.
It's
So
true.
that purpose is, hey, if we're going to be resurrecting the dead mutants, we want to have the one who was dead come back. We don't want to find out later, oh, that person was actually just off on holiday somewhere
Yeah.
or was grievously injured, but not actually dead. We
Recovered.
don't want to
Yeah.
we don't want to have another Madeline Pryor situation happen to us.
Pretty much.
We don't want to have accidentally, oh no, there's two of you.
Hmm.
So X Factor's job, at least theoretically at the beginning, I think it gets kind of shaky.
It
Their
does.
job is to confirm, oh yeah, that person's actually dead.
Yeah.
So it's not so much to solve the why did they die or to find the perpetrator, but it's kind of detective-y in the sense of just confirming actual death.
Sure. And it opens up the possibilities to, deduction on how things happened. We had like Rachel is there. She could do her chrono skimming gimmick. They can kind of find out certain bits and pieces if they need them, if they want them, if there are any questions to be asked. And I definitely like the concept. And this, Excalibur started with Otherworld and never left. I was worried that X Factor was going to start in Mojo World and never leave. I hate Mojo World.
That was
World
another hurdle for me
sucks.
getting interested in the book, because
especially the
Mojo World is
modernization of the Mojo
it's
World.
very, oh, look how meta we can be about people enjoying watching bad things happen while we're reading a book about bad things happen. And
Yeah. And it's like, Mojo was brought in as basically a commentary on like television and how, lowest common denominator TV can be. And, these are the things that get the ratings, and it doesn't necessarily have to be good. It oftentimes is not. It's usually just garbage, garbage in, garbage out. People will consume it. Well, now we're in the 21st century, so it's all like streaming. It's all like some clown with a the reaction GIF on there.
It is the most obvious updating of the gimmick.
Yeah. Absolutely. So full of millennial speak, or do we even say millennial anymore? I'm so out of the loop. I don't know. Have we moved past that era?
I don't even know what's next.
We're generation 45 or something.
I think millennials are now like in their mid 30s and 40s, which is
so they're old
depressing enough. So let's stop talking about that.
They're old enough to hate the people younger than them now. So, but it was very, 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 internet speak, very Twitter speak. I'm surprised they didn't talk with hashtags. It was very unpleasant for that. When I finished the second issue, I actually reached out to people. I think I reached out to you as well.
I did. I got a little message saying, "Hey, is this? Am I wrong or does this suck?" And I wrote back, "No, it sucks even worse than you think it sucks." So there was some disagreement on this. You remember read several letters on your show about people's reactions to it.
Yeah.
And I was one of the more negative, I'd say.
Because this is the first book, and we made it through Fallen Angels. We made it through all the giant-sized stuff. When I got to X Factor number 2 is when I actually questioned whether or not I was going to continue covering every single book, because I hated it that much.
It's one of those books where every character, like even if I'm looking right now at just the cast of characters book page, and all the characters are rolling their eyes.
Because I would always say Aurora with the roll eyes.
Yeah, it was always one character would say something, and the reaction would be, "Oh, you again." Wah, wah. You could kind of hear that derp sound after every line, and like, so it just reminded me, just looking at all the characters lined up, all making that same face.
Yeah, Aurora with the roll eyes, and good old Dak and Dakin.
But okay, so this book, what did this book actually provide to the Krakoan universe? What is important to know about what X Factor did?
I don't think it got important until after X of Swords.
Okay.
I think it was launched at the wrong time. I think it was probably a victim of the whole COVID hiatus. I think that this was supposed to get more issues before it got interrupted. So all we got in the beginning was trying to rescue, was it Wind Dancer from a Mojo World? Wind Dancer had said she was going to commit suicide on the air or let herself be killed on the air or something like that on the Buster Shot TV or whatever, the Buster whatever the hell TV.
I don't know. I think I probably missed a few of these middle issues. I don't think I even read some of these middle ones.
Polaris is a pretty big point of view character in this book. Probably one of the stars. Her and North Star were probably the main draws of this book, if you can call either of them that. But it's a hard book to really talk about outside of everything that comes after X of Tens. Mm-hmm. Because that's when I feel like this book really hit the ground running, and I actually started to enjoy it and actually started to want it to continue, which I wasn't expecting at
Mhm.
all.
And this book ended very unceremoniously.
Abrupt as
It
hell.
was one of
Yeah.
those things where, the writers, after a book is canceled, they often say nice things about, oh, I'm sure we had
Not
more to
this time.
say, but I'm very proud of the team and we
Yep.
did this. And Leah Williams was very much, yeah, they screwed me.
I got effed. Yeah.
And what happened was, I think something that was supposed to be the next arc in her continuing story, they made into a miniseries
Yep.
and then cut it off. So everything that wasn't going to be part of this miniseries, she had to wrap up in like an issue and a half.
Barely. Yeah. I mean, she didn't even get an oversized issue for it. It
And the
was
way she did
rough.
it caused even people in her own in group to say, "Oh, you did the bad thing, and now we have
Yeah.
to ostracize you." And then it's one of those where you see a group turn on itself, and depending on how bad a person you are, you either enjoy that or you go, "Oh yeah, I'm not going to say which kind of person I am," but yeah, you see that kind of thing happen, and part of that was, I think, because she had to wrap it up so quickly that
She had
she
no
was she
choice.
wasn't able to give any subtlety to
No,
that
it
that
didn't have any
story.
room to breathe. It was like it had to just get done. And because I mean, we look at comics now, like Jason mentioned earlier, ongoings just aren't a thing anymore. Everything's a miniseries until we find out it's not, or everything's an ongoing until we find out it's not. So you can't always assume that you're going to have the opportunity to clear up anything. When you're
Right. You
done,
you
you're done.
can't you can't plant little bubbling stories in the background,
Not anymore.
because if it ever gets to be brought back up, you're not going to get to do it. So why should you
Mhm.
spend that time?
Exactly.
Which makes
And
the
why invest
stories less
emotion?
textured, I think, but
Big time. Big
that's the
time.
way it is.
100%. But yeah, I think we'll talk more about X Factor because X Factor, the X Factor chapter of X of Swords is a very, very important one because there's a huge revelation in it that a lot of us didn't see coming. So we'll cover that probably when we get to X of
Yeah.
Swords.
So I think that's where we can wrap things up here. For
I
next
think
time,
so.
I think we'll come back in on the X of Swords crossover,
Very good.
which has some high points, has some low points, but has some major events that continue to be relevant. So that'll be certainly part of what you need to know going
Yeah.
forward. But to wrap this up, which of the books we talked about today would you give as, I'm not going to say a reading assignment, but if people want to know about, what do I need to know about Krakoa going forward? Like, what one or two series or set of issues would you recommend?
Oh, that's a pretty loaded question here. Since I mean, this almost feels like books that came out 100 years ago in some
It
ways.
does, yeah.
Um, for pure enjoyment, Hellions is top of the list. I don't know
For
how
sure.
relevant that's going to be.
It's I don't know how relevant it's going to be. It's hard to read on its own, because a lot of the pleasure, I think, of it comes from seeing how it fit in the
Contrast. Yeah.
cracks of the
Hmm.
other books. I think
For
it's still a
sure.
great book, but it's one of those things, you're not going to get all the references.
Yeah.
I think if you're
X
going to read
Force.
one thing, I would say either X Force or Marauders. I think Marauders
Yeah.
1 through 12 tells a good
Solid as it
story.
comes. Yeah.
It sets up what's going on with Kitty, sets up what's
Mhm.
going on with
Shaw
relationships with the
and
rest of the
Emma. Yep.
world and Shaw. So I think if you were just going to read that as its own story, I think it works quite well.
I think so. I think so. Yeah, those are probably the two that are going to be the most resonant moving forward. I mean, X Force is the only book that, well, I mean, it's the highest numbered book right now, and it's like issue 28 or something,
Right.
which is ridiculous.
Which is
But
like issue 1,000 in modern counting
yes,
terms.
in comic dog years, yeah. But yeah, I would suggest X Force, Marauders, and if you want a good time, Hellions for sure, for sure. But yeah, I think that's probably
All
where we
right.
can
Well,
tie
so
things off for
we'll
today.
tie things up. We'll say thanks everybody who joined us on this giant-sized edition of Weird
Mhm.
Dose of X, because we have things we want to get through before the Judgment Day event starts. So
Mhm.
yeah, next time we'll go forward with some X stuff, and we will be getting to Eternals and Avengers before the
Avengers.
event starts up. So we're going to have to start hitting the accelerator on some of these books. We did speed up this time. I think we can be proud of ourselves for that. We didn't go issue by issue the way we did on some other stuff.
No, no.
But as always, if there's things you think we missed, if there's things you want us to talk about, if there's points you want to bring up, hit us up on the Slack channel or on the Twitter or on the email that I
Mhm.
hope I'll remember to ask Jim to put in the show notes here. And we will be back next time. But first, Chris, remind everybody where they can hear much more about each and every one of these series, each and every one of the issues we talked about today.
Why, certainly, certainly. You can head over to chrisisoninfiniteearths.com, or you can go directly to chrisandreggie.podbean.com, where you'll find, like Jason said, every single issue got its own half-hour to hour-long episode. If you didn't think there was much to talk about, well, maybe I can prove that to you. Maybe I can prove that there isn't much to talk about. But if you want to go like issue by issue through every single thing here, or clump by clump, got those as well.
It's
If you
all
want
out there.
if you want the X-Men Fantastic Four series all in one episode, it exists. If you want X of Swords in 2 episodes, that exists as well. So it's there. chrisandreggie.podbean.com. Chris is on Infinite Earths. I'm not terribly active on Twitter anymore, but you can find me there at Ace Comics.